Special Interim Committee on Property Tax Reform will come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman Tim Taylor. Here. Representatives Reedy, Steinhoff, Boyko, Burns, Chappell, Davidson, Dolan, Fowler, Hales, Harbison, Job, Keithley, Murphy, Overcast, Strickler, Taylor Dell, Van Scoik, Warwick, Williams,
All right, we have 15 committee members present. Thank you all for attending. With no quorum needed, since we're not voting on anything, we'll continue. The purpose of this special interim committee is to examine Missouri's property tax system and propose solutions to ensure fairness, transparency, and sustainability for taxpayers, municipalities across the state. The committee is taking testimony from residents, local officials, and stakeholders across the state with the goal of finding common sense reforms and solutions that will protect homeowners, promote economic stability, and ensure accountability. The committee consists of members who are well-rounded with varying interests from rural and urban districts. So listen, you all are the fourth in a line of on-the-road trips that we're having here. You're the fourth meeting. They have all been well-attended, though I'm going to say right now we still have Macon yet to do and one more at Jefferson City, but I think you all have beat them all so far for attendance. So thank you for showing up. We are not live streaming this particular meeting. Technology is just not working properly. This meeting is being recorded as we speak, and it will be posted within 24 to 48 hours on Missouri House Communications Facebook page and on our website at house.mo.gov under the social media and then the media tab. So you will be able to find it. We would like to extend our sincere thanks to Mayor Bridget Andrew of Clayton, City Manager David Gibson from Clayton, and Leanne Hogan from the Center of Clayton. They have graciously arranged for the use of this room here at the Center of Clayton and have worked closely with our committee staff to ensure a successful meeting. From coordinating seating, the stage setup, and sound equipment to accommodating both the public and our committee members, their efforts and hospitality are deeply appreciated. Their partnership has been essential in making tonight's meeting possible. I would like to thank Rep. Hales for his assistance with tonight's hearing as well, and I would at this time like to give him an opportunity to make a few comments. You have a microphone. Oh, I would remind the committee members prior to you starting, Representative, the two mics on the end are hardwired. If the last three or so on each end would keep those hard mics, if you're in the center here, I'll pass this microphone back and forth as needed. So, Rep. Hales, the mic or the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I hope you can hear. I'm told I need to speak very closely to this mic. I did want to also add a special thank you to Chief Mark Smith with the Clayton Police Department and to the mayor and the city manager. Everybody has been absolutely wonderful making this accommodation happen. So thrilled to see the turnout, thrilled to see all the electeds that I've seen in this room, and look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Appreciate it. Yes, those microphones that are hardwired, you do have to get right into them for them to work properly. Before we begin taking public testimony, I want to remind audience and committee members of the following. We will be taking testimony in order that individuals signed in on the sign-in sheet to testify. Now, there's a caveat to that. There are a couple of people in here that I personally put at the top of the list because I want them to set the stage for this area with the information that they provided. Other than that, I'm going to be following, how many sheets do we have? 2? 3? We have 3 sheets of people signed up. I'm going to be alternating between sheet to sheet, all right? So, pardon, there's 4 sheets, more coming, all right. let me finish with this. I'll add a few more comments. All individuals testifying today or those wishing to go on record must complete and sign a witness appearance form and give it to my legislative assistant June, who is back there, or the two other ladies that are helping her, who are also legislative assistants, just not mine. At the table by the door. If you submit witness testimony online, you do not need to complete a paper witness appearance form as well. Just make sure that you have completed the email verification to finalize and push through your online submission. Okay, listen, of the meetings that we've had thus far, the first one in Jeff City was 5 hours and 20 or 40 minutes, all right? The one in Lebanon was 4 hours and 40 minutes. The one in Kansas City was 4 hours. I bled over the hard stop in Kansas City because the staff at the facility said, look, we've got a few more minutes if you need it. We're not taking that luxury here tonight. We have a hard stop at 9 o'clock, all right? There are folks out here working hard, and they don't necessarily want to stay here longer than they have to. Their facility has to pay them time and a half. So there are more people here to testify than any that we've had thus far. Somebody's not going to get to testify if we ramble too much. That includes us at this table up front. All right, committee members, I remind you, please just ask questions for clarification. We are here to let these folks talk, let them tell us what they need to tell us, and then we can visit with you all outside of this arena if need be. Now, I've said 3 minutes previously. We're going to try that tonight. We're going to set a 3-minute time limit for testimony and then 3 minutes for us to reply or respond. I have the luxury or the option to trim that down, and it is likely I will do that as we go along. So don't be surprised if I cut it to 2 minutes and we move forward. We're going to try to get this done. I would also ask all of you all, if the topic that you're here to discuss has already been brought up and has already been discussed, be considered perhaps to not come up here and testify about the same subject, all right? I know many people like to get up and talk, and that's okay, but understand that there may be somebody in here who wants to bring up something that we've not heard before and may be new to all of us as well. So be considerate of that. If you want to strike your name off the list to testify, just let the ladies in the back know. We would happily accept that and appreciate it very much. All right, committee members, this plays into effect as well. You'll be called on one time to inquire of the witness who is up there. Except for individuals affiliated with the State Tax Commission, the State Tax Commission is represented here tonight, just as they've been in every meeting thus far. And that has been the first time wasn't at my invitation. They come on their own volition, and I have invited them to come to every meeting. So they will be here testifying at multiple meetings. They are going to go last, right? One meeting we had them early on, and it didn't sit well. It sat fine. I want them to go last because they need to hear from all of you all right? They need to understand, and they didn't leave at that earlier meeting, don't misunderstand me, but they need to be able to respond to things that you all bring up. I also want to tell you that though I don't know these folks personally, they are commissioners, and I have heard all too often in my years at the House that commissioners never get out to see people. They never do this, they never do that. I'm here to tell you that these commissioners are here in the fire, so to speak. So if you have the opportunity to talk to them, please do that. They are here to listen to you. Okay, I mentioned I reserve the right to limit times. Decorum. It has been these meetings have been very well received across the state. People have been respectful. They have differences of opinions, including all of us who sit up here, and decorum has been fantastic. I expect the same from you all. Decorum will be adhered to. It is good. If you come up to testify, don't bring anything with you. Save your own notes that you want to read from. If you have a handout for us or something like that, just give it to the ladies. They'll ensure we get it. But when you come up here, just bring your own notes for reading purposes. No signs held up in the back or anything like that. Disruptions from the audience will not be tolerated. Unless you're testifying, you should remain seated, albeit some of you are standing, and I appreciate that. If any of you all who are sitting now feel well rested and want to get up and swap with some of these others, that is a gentlemanly thing to do. So I'm just saying, I'm going to force it. All right. The committee will now receive testimony from the public. Let me find my sheet. Oh, I forgot to mention, there's one thing in here. Oh, yes. We'll be taken, as I mentioned, in order. That's at about 45 minutes into this, we're going to go at ease, right, for about 10 minutes. That gives everybody a chance to get up, stretch their legs, but more importantly, it gives any individual who has come and hasn't been able to sign up yet to get signed up so that we can get them on the list to testify. All right, stand by. Junior, you're going to keep the fourth one. Do you have another one for me, June? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, Jake Zimmerman, you're first on the list. Please come up. All right. Let's with this first witness, let's use this as a test run here. All right. Hold your comments. Keep your comments to yourself. That includes applause. That includes booing. That includes anything. All right. Be respectful for all those who are here. I don't know the man personally. Maybe he deserved that. I don't know. So,
oh, I probably do.
But to my point, everybody be respectful, including those praises, along with any boos. So please introduce yourself and carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Jake Zimmerman. I'm the elected assessor of St. Louis County, representing the approximately million citizens who are homeowners and property owners here in St. Louis County, the heart of the St. Louis region. And I very much appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak first today, and I don't want to take too much of your time because I think most of the people who are here today want to talk to you about Missouri's property tax structure. And of course, as you know, I am not the tax man, and I want to be very mindful of the difference between your role and the role that the people have elected me to do. As Vice Chair Reedy can tell you from his quality time spent doing this work in a different life, the Missouri Constitution and the statutes of this state tell the assessor to do essentially one thing and one thing only, and that thing is to find the stuff that people own, their homes and their cars and their businesses and their real and personal property, and figure out what that stuff could sell for if you had sold it on January 1st. And that's a big job, and it's a complicated job. And what you want out of an assessor more than anything else is you want someone who's going to be committed to treating everybody fairly. And what that means is doing your best to figure out what those houses would actually sell for. And you know, when you deliver that news, as I think we just saw 30 seconds ago, right, that doesn't always make you universally popular. And one of the things about being in this kind of role is if you make it your job to tell the truth, even if the truth is uncomfortable, you know, one year there will be some folks who aren't thrilled about the news in terms of their property value, and another year there may be folks at a school district or a fire department who aren't thrilled when they learn what the implications are for their bottom line. But from the perspective of an assessor, thinking about the job you pay me to do, the job you pay me to do is just that, to try and figure out what the stuff is worth and to treat people fairly and give them an opportunity to have a fair appeal process if they don't agree with us about what the stuff is worth. Now, the word I didn't say anywhere in there is taxes. And that's because that's your job. The reason you guys are here, the reason we had a similar version of this committee a couple of years ago, is so that you consider these very complicated and important questions. And right there at the edge of the stream, That's where my role and the role of an assessor ends. Because questions of tax fairness, questions of where the property tax burden should fall, questions about the Hancock Amendment, questions about how much a school district or a fire department or a city council should be allowed to charge. That is the role of this committee, and that is the role of the legislature to determine. And so my one pitch to you on behalf of all county assessors everywhere is this. As you make policy decisions, be mindful of the difference between taxes and assessments, and don't ever ask an assessor to be a liar. If you want to put a cap on property taxes, put a cap on property taxes. If you want to change the tax structure, change the tax structure. But don't ask an assessor to give people a value on their home other than what it could actually sell for. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to take any questions there may be.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate Representative Murphy, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you. Hello? Yeah. Thank you for coming. I think you're a little mistaken. We're not here to determine tax rates. We're here to determine how those taxes are determined, and that comes with assessments. And what we have found in our in testimony throughout the state is what these people are most concerned about is that they're being taxed and they never know what their next tax bill is going to be. They never know whether or not their tax is going to go up 10%, 20%, whatever. And they're finding that it's also subjective, and it's subjective on your part. There's nothing about this that's objective. The same neighborhood, the same houses can be different valuations. You know, one house could be updated, another one could not, but they both get the same thing. So we're not here to worry about the tax rate. All taxes are local. You just said that. That's not the legislative part here. We're here to figure out how can we make it so that when you do an evaluation, it is fair, and it is fair in all counties across the state, because they're not. There are assessors that don't assess any increases. There are others that are increasing them by 40%, and there are others that are some by 40% in this neighborhood and 2% in another. And if you're the county executive, you get a real good break. So, no, we're here to talk about...
All right, I'm going to remind everybody, you guys have had the best turnout for a meeting, but so far we've not had the best protocol.
So my question to you is, how can we make this an objective rather than a subjective? You don't go to every house of those millions. And frankly, I don't think everybody believes that we're doing a very good job. What can we do to fix that?
I think it's a great question, and I think the most important thing is what you homed in on when you talked about the differences between the way that different county assessors do their job throughout the state of Missouri. And part of that has to do with the tools and the information that the assessors have in front of them. If you look at the statistics, and I'll defer to my colleague from the State Tax Commission here, they can tell you about their ratio studies better than I can. But what their studies show year after year is that here in the St. Louis area, on average, we have the most accurate assessments in the entire state of Missouri. And that gets less true when you get to other jurisdictions. And that's not because of anything magic that we do. It is more than anything else because there's a certificate of value ordinance on the books here in St. Louis County and other counties in this region. And in many other counties, that's not the case. And what that means is that if you sell your house in an open market transaction tomorrow, within the next month or two, I'm going to find out what you sold it for. And when we do our job right, then that gives us the opportunity to value other properties in the neighborhood based on what properties are actually selling for. And as you've correctly identified, we don't always get it right. Right? There's 440,000 pieces of property in St. Louis County, and by God, we're the government. We're not perfect. And so, you know, we could talk about the appeals process and the importance of giving people a fair shake when they disagree. But the direct answer to your question is that if you gave other county assessors those same tools, then you would have more consistent and more accurate assessments throughout the state. And I think that would be a very good thing.
Thank you, gentlemen. I would speak that even my own assessor has spoken about that knowledge, having the proper things to put into the system, and how much better that would be. So it is a topic of discussion that we've heard routinely. Representative Boyko, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. I wanted to give you an opportunity if there are any other ideas for either policies or statutes at the state level that either make it harder for you to treat property owners fairly in your assessments or the appeal process, treat them fairly in the appeal process, or if there's a statute that's not on the books that, if it was on the books, would make it easier for you to treat people fairly in valuation or the appeal.
Thank you, Representative. Well, I already spoke about certificate of value, so I won't beat that dead horse. But the other thing that I might encourage members of this committee to think about, and Representative Murphy has heard me talk about this before, I testified about this before him a couple of years ago, and that's to think about trade-offs in terms of how you spend taxpayer resources. Right now, Missouri state law requires me to personally send an appraiser to a home every 2 years, whether there's been a change or not, whether we see anything different about the property or not, regardless of the aerial picture, anytime that we believe a property might be going up in value by 15% or more compared with 2 years ago. And if you think about that, that's 7.5% per year. Talk to any real estate agent in this room and they'll tell you that throughout the St. Louis market, the average house has routinely gone up by more than 8% per year in many of our communities for the last few years. So that's fine, that's the law, and we follow it. And I'm aware that there are other jurisdictions that have had trouble following that law, and I'm not here to comment about that, but I'll tell you that in our jurisdiction, we believe in doing what you tell us to do. So if you make that the law, we'll do it, right? But what that means is it means that I have dozens and dozens of employees paid for with your tax dollars who spend months upon months of their life individually visiting properties, even if we know nothing has changed about the property, even if we know nothing will likely come of their visit. So one thing that you might think about is, if a moment came where the legislature chose to change those rules, what that would do is it would free up a lot of time for those appraisers who are people who are trained to value property and trained to talk with taxpayers about their property. So, you know, if I had my druthers, my staff, who are paid for by your tax dollars, they'd have more time to talk with the people in this room. They'd have more time to meet with people one-on-one, look at their appraisal evidence, look at comparable sales, look at pictures of the leaky roof, and talk with them. Instead, in many cases, the taxpayer has to wait for that appeal hearing. And we do our very best to treat people fairly during that hearing, but it's just a question of trade-offs and what you choose to spend public employees' time on. So, food for thought.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now listen, with the rest of the witnesses committee, I think I'm going to limit it to 2 inquiries, no more. On this particular occasion, since I didn't set that rule, we're going to go to 1 more inquiry. Representative Burns, you're recognized to inquire.
Hello?
It's on.
Okay. One of the questions I have, thank you for being here, because I know this is, all eyes are on you, right? One of the things that we've learned as we've traveled the state is that we have there's a constitutional right that everything's done equally across the state. And as you might have heard, what we have discovered is that the counties are doing it much differently. One of the things is it's only 4 areas, Jackson County, St. Louis County, St. Charles, and the city of St. Louis, that have this value ordinance, which means the rest of the state is doing other means. So I'm really concerned, how are we constitutionally doing this fairly if we're not even using the same tools? The other thing that I'm not sure the tax people understand, as much as the realtors and real estate agents understand, is that in our market, we are having people upgrade their homes in order to sell for top dollar. And then after you get that sales price, they then use the funds from the sale of their home to pay contractors. So now my home, which may be 20 years old, there's probably a lot of people in the same boat, we're not competing with a like home. We're competing with a home and that contractor's improvements. And I do think we need to shed some light on that and get some people to say, hey, what are some better ways of doing that? The other thing that was interesting is when that came up, all of our other reps who don't live in those 4 areas were just absolutely shocked and appalled that their privacy would be invaded on the sale of their home. And I think that's a really good argument. What do you think about the privacy of a homeowner's data? Because as a real estate agent, I witnessed this certificate of value used against sellers because then their home wouldn't appraise because it leaped too high. So there really is a conversation. So you're saying, why don't we use this tool across the state? But I'm telling you, the rest of the state finds a severe privacy issue. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that the best evidence of what a piece of property is worth is what a willing buyer would actually pay for it. And, you know, we live in a free market and a capitalist society, and we live in a society that is based on the idea that the government doesn't set the prices for things, but rather the market does. And so my view of the world is that more information is better, and just as here in St. Louis County, any realtor has access to that Maris system, the multi-list as it's sometimes called, and has the ability to see what homes are listing for and what they're selling for. So my personal opinion is that that information is properly a matter of public record and it's helpful to people.
Okay, so how about we do an amendment where people take off of the valuation so you're not penalizing your neighbors for your improvement? Should they remove their improvements that were made for the sale of that particular house? Would that make it more fair if those improvements?
So
30 seconds to respond.
I can't speak to what other jurisdictions do. I can only tell you what we do. And what we do is we do include something of a, what we call a fix-up factor in determining the value of people's properties. We understand that the home that is listed for sale, they spruced up the kitchen and they spruced up the bathroom, and it probably looks a little bit different than your home does. But there's a variety of market factors that you have to take into account when you're trying to figure out what something could actually sell for. And the proof is ultimately in the numbers. And again, I would encourage you to look at the State Tax Commission's numbers. And what they'll tell you is that our appraisals come awfully close, though usually a little bit under, the actual price of what homes are selling for. But as you said, there's other jurisdictions in the state where that's not true, and it's worth thinking about why that is.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet. All right. I will bring up the next witness, and then I'm going to give an on deck so the person who's on deck can be prepared. Next up, Tim O'Leary. You are the next up. Please come up. And then on top, Bob Piper will be on deck. Gentlemen, just
I'm Tim O'Leary.
introduce yourself.
I'll introduce myself. I'm Tim O'Leary. I live in Mystery Hills, a neighborhood in Creve Coeur of 140 homes. It's built in 2 phases. I'm in the original phase with the older homes. They don't have the amenities, the basements, the garages, the attached garages. They don't have the fireplaces, the multiple decks, the game rooms. They are completely different from the first part of the subdivision. This year, on the comparable areas for the comparable properties for that area, I downloaded 19 homes, 19, of which 11 of those 19 were on the expensive street, $300,000 to $340,000 a piece for these homes, while the homes that are in the older neighborhood are $80,000 less. I've lived in my home since 1998. I have never once, in all the appraisers that have come to my house, I have never once been approached by a knock on the door. When I am home, I am left with a card that the place was, that an appraiser had been there. Never once has an appraiser stepped inside my house. It is a dirty word for appraisers because it's called a split foyer or a split level. And if you want to follow the ANSI code on what a split level is, which I definitely implore Mr. Zimmerman and his county to do, is to understand that a basement, which is not chargeable for square footage or not represented as square footage, is different when, in fact, everything that is downstairs in my house is above grade. I have downloaded, in fact, I have analyzed and researched 10 properties out of the 60 in the southern section, which are just like my own, and all of the tax records show that they are being listed as partial basements, which means the entire downstairs is not counted for square footage. So if you're like me and you have 770 feet upstairs, but you really have 1,100 square feet, they're going from about $200 a square foot to $280 a square foot. This raises the price of the home unnecessarily. And again, all you have to do is have an appraiser come inside, if they will, come inside and look at where the dirt is. If the dirt is above your floor line, you are, as ANSI would say, a basement, and therefore that property doesn't count. So here's what I'm going to get to with the fairness of these assessments, which they are entirely not. First of all,
Gentlemen, you have 30 seconds.
the appraisers don't know the condition of the house. Secondly, I never received, and this is very important, Jackson County a year ago rolled back all of the county's appraisers for more than 15% because I never did get the letter from the county stating that it was mandatory to have an inspection within 30 days because I didn't get my assessment until May 21. The assessment was on May 2nd. I was at the death of a family. By the time I came home on June 7th, it was too late to have an appraiser look at my property. This is why
thank
it's
you.
not working. Wait,
Sir, you're done. Don't go away though. You have questions coming to you,
Well,
so there are
and
more times. Just stand by. Are there any questions for this witness?
Yes, sir.
No. Sir,
Chairman.
sir, I will take care of that.
Oh, I'm
Thank you.
sorry. Thank you.
That's all right. Appreciate it.
Learn from my
Who is inquiring? Representative Warwick, you are recognized to inquire.
I was going to ask you if I could finish your statement. Go right ahead.
I'm sorry.
You can go ahead and finish your statement on my time.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking at Jackson County again, the State Tax Commission rolling back all of those appraisals because they were not compliant, just as the county is not compliant. If you are not receiving a letter from the county that specifically states that you have 30 days from the time they appraise your property to have someone look more in depth at your property to remediate the inaccuracies of how they're assessing your property, then you are being ripped off. And you are not being represented, and it is a violation of Amendment 14 of due process that you cannot have someone look at your property to determine what its condition is before they tax you. This is interesting. This is one thing I'd like to show here, which is very important for everybody in this room and everybody who may even hear of this report. This is
I'm sorry.
the only thing.
No problems.
So, sir,
Oh.
if you were here earlier, I mentioned don't bring anything up here except
All
your
right.
own notes.
All I'm going to say is this. I would very much feel that because I'm in the older section and because I'm an older person, I would like to feel that I'm being treated fairly because I've lived in my house for 28 years, but I can't add improvements on a fixed income like younger people that are moving in. And so my property being compared to a property on my comps that has sold 3 times in 3 years and has gone up $67,000 in value, I cannot play that game. I cannot accept a comp that does. Equalization means equalization of treatment, not equalization of property value. And what they are doing is they're taking improved properties and they're raising my value to be equal with theirs. Completely wrong.
Everybody just stop. Now, listen. Decorum will stay in order here. Set the bar high, St. Louis, set the bar high for yourselves. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony. Representative Dell Taylor, the other half of the Taylor caucus, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you for your attention.
Sir?
Sorry, you were calling somebody else.
Good evening. Can you all hear me? Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. O'Leary, for coming. You started off your testimony talking about the notices that were placed on your door, but you said that no one has ever come in and done an inside inspection. Have you ever requested or scheduled an inside inspection?
I'll tell you what, I have the lowest priced property out of 140 homes. I have the highest
Sir, have you scheduled an inspection?
I have the highest property assessment of $50,600 of 31.1% increase in my property value. I have never expected to see this kind of an assessment happen before, so it came to my attention. I have a detached deck, a detached carport. This is important.
It is important, sir, but my question is pretty straightforward. Have you ever scheduled an inside inspection?
It did not require, I did not know about this rule until I inquired about improvements. When I went to the Missouri statutes and looked under the ruling for improvements, I found out that it was required if a 15% appraisal or higher was happening, that you had 30 days to seek that approval. It says that actually on the appraisal statements, but it does not mean that they will give you a month's notice to have that actually happen.
Well, the question is, yes, they give you notice that your property may have appreciated, and they're giving you an opportunity for someone to come inside and notice exactly some of the things that you've been talking about. So I'm asking you if you're familiar with the process
I am.
for an inside inspection.
Here's my answer to your question, and it's very specific. If you don't get your assessment from May 21st to tell you what your assessment is, how do you know whether you want to appeal it to have an assessor come to your house within 30 days?
Sir, some of us have lived in our houses many years, and you may miss the window this year, but then you may want to reappeal it again 2 years later. Because again, some of the points that you're making are very valid, that how would we know what improvements have taken place inside your house? How would we know if it's a finished basement? I think the process allows for inside inspections, and that's really what I'm just asking is, are you familiar with the process that would allow you to have that inside inspection? You are. And then the second question is, sir, have you appealed? Have you gone through the appeal process?
I'm in the process of it now. But
You've been living here for 28 years?
Let me answer your question. I don't think you understood my answer. I did not know until after June 7th that my assessment was more than 15%. By that time, it was too late within the 30-day expiration period to have a full inspection to show them the error of their math assessment. Okay, those are done in math, and they're formulaic and have nothing to do with real information. Okay,
well,
I was already past the expiration time by the time the mail delivered my actual assessment. So by then, it's a default issue.
Yep, time's up, gentlemen, so.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I mean, one closing.
It is a learning process. For some of us that may be new homeowners, we get this, and yes, we might miss the deadline. For some of us that are older homeowners that know and have gone through this a few times, I may miss it this year, but I may have an opportunity next year. There is an appeals process. There is an opportunity for inside inspection.
But only if you know in time.
Thanks. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir, for your testimony.
Only if you know in time.
Bob Piper, I believe I have that. You're up next.
Yes, Bob Pieper, Richmond Heights, Missouri. To respect your time limit, I would like to submit 5 quick comments on the general subject of taxation and revenue generation in the state, and then a couple of comments on the related issue of how tax money is spent. First off, I would ask the committee to include permanent registration for the senior citizen property tax freeze in any tax reform proposal you all consider. Secondly, I would ask that in any sales or consumption tax proposal you may all consider, exclude food as well as pharmaceuticals and medical devices. On the spending side, I would ask the committee to provide adequate funding for older adult services as defined under the Federal Older Adult Act, and for Medicaid. And specifically here we're talking about replacing any funding lost to Missouri Medicaid or older adult services as the result of federal budget cutting, or as increased spending that may be necessary due to inflation or increases in the senior citizen population. But finally I'd like to offer a couple of maybe out-of-the-box suggestions, but I think maybe they are pertinent. To help ensure adequate funding for the state for necessary programs like perhaps we've just talked about, I would like to suggest the committee consider banning future public spending on non-essential public works. Specifically, we're talking about here things like sports stadiums or convention centers that have been demonstrated not to provide return on investment. And finally, in a real out-of-the-box suggestion, but one I hope is pertinent, to provide an immediate infusion of one-time revenue, sell or repurpose non-performing public facilities, taking advantage of current efforts by commercial interests such as AEG, Live Nation, Fox Broadcasting, to acquire facilities of this nature and operate them profitably. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time to talk to you.
Thank you for coming to testify. Don't run away. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Yeah. Page 4. Let's go with, I think it's Amy, I'm sorry, Polker, is that right? All right, I got it close enough. She knows who that is. Next up on deck, that is, will be Steve Elming.
Can you guys hear me?
Hold it, go
Okay.
ahead.
I really appreciate the opportunity to come before you guys. I understand that you
If,
guys.
if you will, ma'am, introduce yourself, tell us who you're representing, maybe even self, if that's what it is.
Okay. My name is Amy Pelker. I'm the mayor of the city of St. Anne. And I'm here to represent my citizens. Okay? One thing I can say for you guys is that senior tax freeze, that's awesome. I would have loved to have seen it go further so that any senior that has lived in their home for 30 years, paid for it, has no taxes. That would be wonderful. But a freeze, and if we can hold stay on page 2, the law, that would be lovely, is so valuable for them. Now, my city has roughly 24, 25% seniors. So, you know, I'm sure you guys are wondering why I'm for a senior tax freeze. Well, it's because my seniors are being put out of their homes. And that senior tax freeze is going to help them. But the work you do here on taxes and property taxes into the future is also so very important on other aspects. I understand that there's some thoughts out there of legislation that may eliminate property taxes entirely and go to sales taxes, which who in their right mind wouldn't say, yes, get rid of my property tax, but I'm hearing a number like 18% sales tax to replace it, and I'm hoping that's not right, because quite frankly, then we would be paying more in taxes in a year than we're paying for our homes. Okay? At any rate, I'd like to learn more about that and have everybody know that they're welcome to come talk to me, my city administrator, and my chief of police to find out what's really going on inside a municipality. I've heard lots of rumors that you guys don't think we need the money to service our residents. Not all of you, I'm sure. But there are a few who think that we could do a better job. Now, I don't know about you guys sitting up here, but I happen to be on the Republican side. So I fully understand some of your thought processes. I'm also a pachyderm. There are services that the municipalities need to be able to give their citizens, because we cannot get those from the county. My citizens have 1 to 2 minute service times from their police department. We are getting streets renovated through a fortunate TDD that the citizens passed. And, you know, quite frankly, seriously, before you do anything, get into these municipalities and find out what's really going on. Just don't believe what you're hearing out there. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your testimony. I'm going to go first on this one. I think I heard you allude to that you'd heard something that may be coming out of this committee or something.
Yeah.
I'm going to assure you that that is all rumor. There isn't anything coming out of this committee as of yet. We are still gathering information to try to figure out. So if you ever hear, all of you, if you hear anything that this committee's leaning one way or another right now, you are sorely mistaken. Having said that, you said you're a Republican. There are a lot of people represented here, and all of them have different ideas of what they think is the best way to go forward on this.
True.
Right? So we're all going to get together when all this public testimony is taken. We're going to get together and we're going to try to figure out what our recommendation is going to be. So the Speaker of the House has told me that he wants something by filing in December, pre-filing in December. So we are going to work our hardest to make fixes to what we've got going on here, but nobody knows what that looks like just yet. So thank you for your testimony. Having said that, is there anyone who would like to inquire of this witness? Seeing none. Thank you, ma'am, very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Call me.
All right. I think, Steve, you were on deck? All right, and up is, on deck now will be, I think I have it, Sherry Knipp. You will be on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve Elman, County Executive from St. Charles County. I think my assessor does a really, really good job. I'm here to talk to you about some things that you've done, which I appreciate, and some suggestions on how you could do it even better. Last June, the legislature passed Senate Bill 3 after adding an amendment that requires some, but not all counties to put a measure on the ballot, allowing the voters to freeze the real property tax liability in that county. The debate in St. Charles County is about to begin, and I filed a bill with the county council today to put the question on the ballot before the voters on April of 2026. And the council meeting will be first read next Monday and hopefully passed on September 8th. I hope I can sign the bill on September 9th, the date the bill goes into effect. That's Senate Bill 3. I will support passage of the measure in April and anticipate the county council members will do the same, since it would have very little effect on St. Charles County finances. We have had 0% real property tax rate for our general fund for decades. Real property taxes pay for road and bridges in the unincorporated and incorporated areas of the county, and also alarm and dispatch throughout the county, but this amounts to only 6.5% of our budget. Now, I understand it's easy for me to say what I'm saying. Other districts will be affected, and those taxing districts in the county would have to make do with less revenue growth, not less revenue. Less revenue growth, as St. Charles County government has done for the last 2 years. Remember when the value of used cars went up like 20% a couple years ago? We voluntarily froze our personal property taxes and collected just the same amount of money and did not get that windfall. And we survived. And that's what a lot of these subdivisions are going to have to do. This proposed freeze in Senate Bill 3 is similar to the freeze for seniors, which several jurisdictions approved 2 years ago. However, this freeze is dissimilar to the senior property tax freeze that left it up to each county whether it would put the issue before the voters. By not requiring it be put on the ballot, the legislature avoided having to pay the cost as required by that part of the Constitution's Hancock Amendment that prohibits unfunded mandates. While the Office of the Charles County Counselor has notified the State Office of Administration that we will be requesting reimbursement for the cost of the election in April, so they can add that to their funding request to you for your supplemental budget in January. We are going to head and put the money in our budget as well, because if we have to litigate this thing, it certainly we won't have an answer from the courts by April. Now, because the senior tax freeze applies to all counties, there was no problem with the section of the Constitution that requires classification of non-charter counties into no more than 4 classes, and requires, quote, all counties with the same class, all counties within the same class shall possess the same powers and be subject to the same restrictions. Some of you who are from 2nd, 3rd, 4th class county, you understand that you're in a classification now with people from other counties, so you're not all going to be treated the same way in a particular class. This classification of non-charter counties in Senate bill, however, totally ignores this section. And there's already one lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the freeze legislation as written because, among other things, it discriminates against voters in some counties. After the voters have approved the freeze in Franklin, Warren, or Lincoln County, the court could declare the legislation unconstitutional and void the results of the election. As for the counties of St. Louis, St. Charles, Jefferson, and City of St. Louis, all with charters, the classification system does not apply. Homeowners in the city and county also deserve the opportunity to approve a freeze. The executives in Franklin, Jefferson County, and I all agree that this is probably going to be approved in our counties, and it will be an added incentive to attract new families to a region that has not been growing. It's also will create an incentive.
Hold on, I'm going to stop you right there. Firm stop. Any questions for this witness?
Mr. Chairman, could I have this 10 seconds
Hold
to
on a
finish
second, sir.
my thought?
Representative Burns, you're recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you. And County Executive Steve Ellman, would you please continue your thought before my question?
Yeah. The problem is, this would be a great thing for St. Charles County. If we have this, it will attract people. The region needs to grow. It's having no population growth right now. The problem is, it will also create an incentive for people in St. Louis City and County who are already moving to Franklin, Jefferson, and St. Charles in great numbers. Well, even more of those people will be moving. So I think if we're going to do this, we need to do it for all the counties in the region.
And to your point, if I can jump in before I fully lose the question, one of the things that I think, this is my region of the area. I'm from St. Charles County, and so we're neighbors. During this process of this committee, we found out that we have appointed a board for the State Tax Commission, and their full job is to make sure that our elected assessors for each of our counties are doing basically being equal across the state. Come to find out, as you heard me ask earlier, we're not using the same tools. We're getting different percentages, so we're not following the Constitution. Because of that, how do you feel as the county executive if I would file a bill that said each county can make their own determination on how they want to do their taxes? Why should I be bound to what his county wants to do in their county?
I think that would violate several provisions in the Constitution.
So then we would have to do a constitutional amendment and put that up to a vote?
Probably Article 6, Section 8, possibly Article 3, Section 42.
Okay, so we would have to do a constitutional amendment.
Yes, I believe so. But
how do you think that?
I think the purpose of the Constitution is to create uniformity. What Senate Bill 3 has done is create 3 groups of counties, okay?
Well, I'm not even talking about, put that aside because I'm really not talking about that. What I'm talking about is being on this committee, being only a state representative for 3 years, and finding out that different counties across the state are at 30 to 50%, while our county, St. Charles County, is at 90 to 110. Finding out that we're using our sales data in order to determine value, while others are asking their friends in their county who are real estate agents. Because it's not being fair, I think it's time to, cut the ropes and let the boats do their own thing. Because I found out the only thing they're collecting is one line item, and that's for the blind pension. And we have a bureaucrat tying down our elected assessors across the state because of one line item.
Well, you can pass whatever you want, tell the assessors to do, but if there's no way to enforce it and no way to make sure that they're doing it, you're going to have the kind of
So
situation.
then we would just have to make sure our assessors really realize they are going to be fully accountable at the ballot box.
Yeah, and that should be an issue at the
Time's
next
up for this
election.
inquiry. Thank you all very
Thank you,
much.
County Executive.
Okay.
No, sir, don't. We still have time for one more question, and there is one. Representative Reed, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today and the work you do. I do want to, just one clarification. When you talked about when car values went up in 21, 22, that your county chose to freeze, did you freeze the taxes or did you freeze the assessments?
We changed the assessment so that we would collect the same amount of money that we did 2 years before.
So did you freeze the assessments where they couldn't go up?
No, we did it for 2 years.
You did it on the levy side.
We'll have to address that in September again.
Well, we passed a bill this last year that car values cannot increase.
I noticed
And
that.
in the Senate, there was an amendment put on by legislators from this area that if the car was worth over $50,000, they did not want that to apply. But my bill said that that car values, even if they showed the book value went up, that they could not increase. And we did pass that. It was passed in House Bill 199. But I commend you for doing something and protecting your taxpayers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Representative Keithley, I know you asked for an inquiry, but I did set the rule of 2 inquiries per witness, so please meet with the county executive afterwards, if you would, sir. Sir,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. All right, up next, I'm trying to get in line here. I have to go, oh yes, Sherry, is it Knipp? Is that right? Knipp? You're up next, yes. And then on deck is Krista Van Herco. Please, ma'am, introduce yourself and continue.
Sharon Knipe. I live in University City. I've been in my home. Oh, okay. Sharon Knipe. I live in University City, not far from here. I've been in my home for 34 years, and I've appealed my assessments previously and actually done okay. We got the letter that said the approximate rates were going to go up 15%. So like a lot of seniors here who are on a set income every month, we plan for taxes, insurance, et cetera, so we can afford everything. So I figured, okay, 15%, figured that was pretty fair, I could deal with it. Then I got my reassessment and it went up 25%. The houses that I'm compared to, I have a 1,026 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. I'm compared to houses with 3 and 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. The last time I tried to appeal, I was told, well, you have a new kitchen. It was 9 years old. I'm still paying for a new kitchen. That's now, 12 years old. I just think a lot of other people here are in the same position that I am. We just want to stay in our homes. I do thank you for the tax freeze. That's going to help immensely. But I will tell you, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but when I went and applied for that, and I did it on the very first day, so I did a long time ago, my first thought was, I wonder how much my assessment's going to go up next year because they want it to go higher to get our taxes. You know, that's just a conspiracy theory. I'm sorry. I didn't know I was going to get a chance to speak, so I didn't prepare anything else.
Okay.
But it's just to be hit with a 25% increase and figure, okay, utilities went up. I just got a notice our water rates are going up. You know, everything's more expensive. Now you just have to plan for that added several $100s or whatever it's going to cost me for that. But to tell me it's going to be 15% and then it winds up to be 25% is pretty significant amount of money for some people.
I don't want to cut you off, you still have a little bit of
that's
time,
it.
but if you're willing, if anyone
done.
has any questions for this, Representative Del Taylor, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Knight. Thank you for joining and thank you for sharing your testimony.
Thank
You started off talking about the fact that you actually did go through an appeals process. Did you have someone come inside and do an inspection?
No, I've gone through the appeals process before. This time, it was my mistake. When I got the information, I kind of put it aside. I missed the opportunity to appeal, and that was my fault for not paying attention to the date. So this year, I did not get to appeal.
Okay. You have appealed in the past.
Yes.
What's your experience been like in the past with the appeals process?
Pretty good. You know, they've been fairly good. I did learn to say one thing. If you think it should be $5,000 less, you ask them for $10,000 less, and you get the 5.
Like any good negotiation.
Oh yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I'm State Representative Del Taylor. I live in St. Louis City, but I used to live in U City when I went to WashU. And in hindsight, I'm kind of appreciative that my house values went up. You talked about them going up, and you said that, you know, the notice may have said 15.
15.
It actually, the appraised value actually went up to about 25.
Right.
And not to be personal, but do you budget? Do you pay taxes quarterly? How do you typically pay your property taxes?
I'm really good at managing my money. I just make sure that each month, you know, I have money put aside to pay car insurance, homeowner's insurance, and my taxes. And that's several months of my income.
Okay. And then, in my case, I actually pay a little bit of my tax probably in the September time frame, and then when I get the bill, and I'll pay again in December to settle up. Do you typically only pay the taxes once a year, or have you ever tried paying multiple
I save
payments?
up to make sure I have that money to pay it once a year.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing your testimony.
Thank you.
Representative Chappell, I know you wanted to make an inquiry, but Representative Steinhoff had beat you to the punch, so Representative, you are recognized for inquiry.
Thank you. I'll be quick. You said that you did apply for the senior property
Yes,
tax freeze.
I did.
So even though your assessment went up, your taxes were frozen, weren't they?
I mean, I thought that didn't go into effect till next year.
Well, the
tax freeze-
assessment then partnered with the levy, which the levy could have adjusted. I don't know how the levies were set in your area, but your tax bill, your actual tax bill, you said went up 25%?
My appraisal on my house went up 25%.
But your tax bill might not have gone up 25%. Right,
Oh.
so do you know how much your tax bill went up?
I don't have a tax
Okay.
bill. I mean, how do
Okay.
Yeah, we don't get them until later.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am, for coming to
Thank you. I
testify.
appreciate it.
Listen, I lost track of time. At this moment, we are going to be at ease for 10 minutes. At ease. Now listen, when you come back, there shouldn't be any empty chairs in this room. All right? Find a place to sit down. No empty chairs. At ease for 10 minutes.
Hi there.
All right, everybody find a chair. I see empty seats in this building. If you're standing up, come sit down. So fill the chairs, please. Come sit down. All right, a couple of things here. I've had 6 special favors asked since we've been at the 10-minute break. So that's a little about 1 minute and 10 seconds per special favor. When it comes to the committee, I've limited it to 2 of us, all right? To be fair to the Republican-Democrat side, if a Democrat asks a question, I will reserve that for a Republican if they've raised their hand. Vice versa. All right? Share. Unlike our committee meeting rooms in the Capitol, I cannot see you all. So be sure, Jay will be looking. Be sure that you raise your hand, throw something at me if you need to. If it's coming from the side, I'll take it with a bigger grain of salt than if it's coming from out there, okay? Now, secondly, I've been asked about why have we had so many politicians speaking before the general public. This committee is here to listen to everybody, including the public, including the taxpayers. Part of this process is understanding the assessors and how they do their job in their particular county. It's how the tax commission does their job. And it is about us as taxpayers and how we are receiving what we are receiving on the end result of this. So, if it seems as though there have been a lot of politicians up here, one of those politicians was at a request of one of my committee members to have them go first set stage. Any others after that was simply because they got here before you did. All right? Now, I have 4 sheets here. Some of you got here first, some of you got here last. I'm following an order that I've followed through every meeting thus far. I've got all 4 sheets in front of me, and I'm going 1 sheet to the next. All right? And I'm going to continue to follow that. I apologize otherwise. I am making exceptions. As the chair, I have the liberty to do that. And the exception I'm getting ready to make is for a person who is middle of the list, but an extenuating circumstance is keeping her from testifying in a timely manner that she would like to do. So, Tamika Jones, if you will come up here and be the next in line to testify, we will welcome you. If you will introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Tamiko Jones, and this is my son. This is Brock. Would you like to introduce yourself? You're being shy right now. That's fine. Yes, your name is Brock. Thank you for sharing with everyone. So I would like to thank you all. I would like to thank the committee for being here and for giving us the time to speak. I just wanted to speak to, quite honestly, the benefit of the personal property tax dollars. It is something that is very near and dear to my heart, and it affects my family on a variety of levels. So I am coming to you not only as a mother, first and foremost, as a citizen here in St. Louis County, as a taxpayer. I'm coming to you as Brock's mom, as someone that utilizes those personal property tax dollars to ensure that my son and others like him with developmental disabilities have the best life possible. So Brock utilizes the personal property tax dollars that we all pay to access leisure services, to have socialization opportunities in the community with his peers. He uses those services. He could potentially use those services when he graduates from school for employment supports that a lot of our folks with developmental disabilities need. Aside from being his mother, I also have the privilege of working with folks that have diagnoses of developmental disabilities. So my primary role, which is also funded through personal property tax dollars, thank you to the Productive Living Board, who is the Senate Bill 40 board here in St. Louis County. My primary role is to provide community outreach and education. I also oversee a program called Family Navigation. What does that mean? So I get up in front of folks like you, the general public, and I educate them on disability services and resources and why they are so vital to the people that we support. 1 out of 6 children is now diagnosed with a developmental disability, and that is according to the CDC, and that data was pulled less than 2 weeks ago. When you ask me what does that mean for citizens in St. Louis County, that means there's over 116,000 individuals in St. Louis County that have developmental disabilities. And I can tell you right now that a fraction of those folks are accessing the services that could increase their livelihoods and increase their, the risk of them being without housing. We offer supports for folks to ensure that they are able to maintain their independence so that they are not accessing some of those other state-funded services that are also in jeopardy right now. So I would just like to thank you, and that's our statement.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions for this witness? Representative Del Taylor, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you, and I'll be quick. Ma'am, thank you very much for joining us. You talked about some individuals that, obviously there's a spectrum, and some individuals need services that help them with their independence. Tell us a little bit about some of those, what are some of those disabilities and how these dollars help them maintain their independence and maybe even have jobs, etc.
Absolutely, thank you. So we're talking about, developmental disabilities. There's several diagnoses that are out there. So I think some of the most popular ones that we hear about are potentially individuals that have a cerebral palsy diagnosis, an intellectual disability, meaning a lower IQ, autism. So there are services, like there's a service here in St. Louis County called supported living. That is basically giving an individual a life coach that comes in and works with them up to 50 hours a month. They can help them pay their bills. They can help them learn to grocery shop, to eat healthy, so that we're increasing their health and wellness. We can help them access the community. They work on a variety of life skills, but it's essentially a life coach, and it's paid for through your personal property tax dollars so that those individuals, just like you and I, can live independently and live their best lives, because I would hope that we would all want that for everyone. There's also job coaches to teach people how to do jobs in the community so that we're working what we would call a competitive employment job. It's very social. But there are job coaches out there, and there are retention specialists to help those people keep those jobs that they're at so they can also be productive members of society. And of course, if they're working in those types of environments, they're also contributing and paying taxes. And that's, we want that for everyone.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Representative Harbison, you're recognized for an inquiry. And I failed to mention the time limit has been moved to 2 minutes per witness and inquiries.
Thank you very much for being here. I won't take up much of your time or anybody else's, but I want to just say thank you. I know words are easy, but the job is hard, and we're going to do everything we can to do the best we can with that and make sure there are funds available at the best we can do. Like I said, I cannot promise results, but I can promise effort. And so thank you for being here and what you do. You're a special person.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. All right, back up to the list. Krista Van Herco. Is it Herco? Is that right? Or I'm not close. On deck, Greg Alsbury. Oh, that's tax. Of course. That's twice in a row I've done that. Let's do Adil Raymond. You're on deck, sir. Ma'am, please proceed.
Hi, I am Krista Van Herway. I'm the director of the Kirkwood Public Library, which is about 5 miles south of here. I'm also a taxpayer who lives about 3 miles north of here. I am so pleased to be able to speak to you guys as huge fans of public service. I'm a huge fan of public service. I know you are, because applying for a job and going for an interview and getting it, it's great, but you guys did a lot more than that. You put yourself out there to be elected. So you must be fans of public service, just like I am. You've heard from other libraries. The library serves everyone. Everyone's welcome at a library. That is the same constituency that you all serve, right? I mean, you have your districts, but you serve every single person in your district. We are a taxing district that gets most of our money from property taxes. For Kirkwood Public Library last year, it was about 92% of our budget. I started there in January of 2020, so I have some numbers just going back from those dates. When I started in 2020, the minimum wage in the state was $9.45. In 2026 January, it's going to be $15. That's a 58.7% increase. When I started, Kirkwood Public Library was very proud that we were paying our entry-level people a little bit more than minimum wage. We were actually paying $9.66. That's still a 55% increase. This CPI, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, has gone up 25% since January 2020. Of course, I don't know what it's going to be in January of 2026. I'm a taxpayer who really wants fair and equitable system to fund the services that my neighbors and I have voted for, that we want, that we use every day. I am imploring that you guys use actual data and logic to fix this system. I'm not saying the system isn't broken, but don't just burn it down and ruin services that everybody has voted for, want, and they use. Would love to answer any questions or give you reading recommendations.
Thank you,
if that's
ma'am.
your preference.
Thank you. Representative Keithley, any inquiry from this witness? No? Okay. Representative Boyko, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Time is short, so we can talk about the Boyko family overdue fees some other time.
There are no overdue fees anymore. You're good.
And when was the last time that the Kirkwood Library went out to the voters for a levy increase?
It is, I believe, 17 years ago. There was an increase. The building was renovated at that time. That renovation was completed about 16 years ago. So I think the vote was 17 years ago.
And I assume it passed back then?
Yes, it did pass back then, and that was before my time. So the beautiful building that you are very familiar with, and I invite everyone to visit my library or another public library, it came before I started there.
Well, you were booked all summer, but I'll try to make it next week.
Thank you. Any other inquiries from this witness? Seeing none, ma'am, thank you for coming to testify. Yes, sir, you're up. David with Show Me Institute's on deck.
Hi, good evening. My name is Adil Rahman. I'm a resident of Ladue. I don't think I'm going to say anything profound that has not been said before, but I thought I should register myself here. I feel that the property tax system is punishing the very same people who have built and kept our neighborhoods strong. I've been a resident of Ladue for 15 years. My 3 kids went through the school district, so I'm very well aware of what my property taxes have given to me and my family during our stay here in Ladue. I also feel that the paper value isn't the spendable income. So when we assess, the paper value of my house has gone up, but it's not my spendable income. So this puts an undue burden on us as families to decide whether we're going to pay the increased tax bill or just meet our basic living needs. The property tax appeal system that has been brought up quite a few times, I feel is built backwards. The burden of proof is on me as a homeowner to prove that the assessed value is in fact correct, instead of being the other way around. Like this time when I received my comps, there were 5 properties listed on it. Now it's up to me to go pull the value of all of those houses, look at what they've done, how the houses are different. The first 2 properties I pulled up had swimming pools, and my house does not have a swimming pool. That just completely threw me off. So it clearly shows that I'm being assessed against values that are not comparable to my house. So I would say that we need to come up with a fair way to assess values so that the homeowners don't have to do their entire homework. I have to take time away from work to go pull all of this data and do the assessment. In all other forms of finance and accounting, houses, the physical assets depreciate in value, whereas in our case, our houses, even if they are 60 years old, continue to grow up in value, which completely defies logic for me. So I just wanted to register that. Thank you.
No, thank you, gentlemen. That's you're speaking words that we've heard often. So don't go away just yet. Any questions for this representative? Representative Del Taylor, you're recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you. I'll be quick. Thank you for joining us, sir. Thank you very much. Some things do appreciate. Some bottles of wine, some art, some things do appreciate. So a house appreciating is not such a foreign concept. Sir, have you ever appealed the value of the assessment on your home?
I have not.
Okay. It sounds like you did some of the research, though, and within moments you were able to identify some significant variances between what your house was compared to and what you thought was fair. So I think the appeals process literally is a dialogue. I would encourage you and everyone else, yes, it's a mass process for so many of us that live in the area. They look at comps, they try and find things that are close, but again, computers are going to try and do their best, and they're going to come up with an average. No one knows your home better than you, so if you disagree with the assessment, yes, there might be some onus for you, but it sounds like you were very successful in recognizing very quickly these comps are not comparable to my home.
Again, I'll repeat the same thing. I think the appeals process is more of a trapdoor than a safety net. It's pulling us into this process of long, cumbersome maze of documentation, pulling all this information. You feel that it takes a few seconds to do that assessment. It does not. I'm not a realtor. I am not an attorney. I do my job. I'm raising 3 kids. So this is all on top of it, which is unnecessary because somebody somewhere decided that my property has appreciated when it was compared to houses that have swimming pools. So you're putting the burden of proof on me instead of taking responsibility for jacking up my property taxes, which I feel is unfair. If I find one area, like if I say this house has a pool, my house doesn't have a pool, it should disqualify your comps immediately.
Or they would look at assessors, professionals will know, okay, well, there's a dollar value associated with that. I will subtract that and I can adjust your value a little lower. I think that's the process. What I'm getting at is that the appeals process really is a dialogue. I'm listening to you. Yes, you're not necessarily a real estate agent or appraiser or anything like that, but the appeals process is a dialogue for you with the others. And yes, it's going to take some time and some hours, but that appeal, that home valuation is probably going to last and have an impact for many years, the many years that
Representative,
you live there.
I'm going to have to cut you.
2 years.
Don't go away.
Oh, sure.
On, one of the two of you. All right, Representative Murphy, you're recognized for an inquiry.
I appreciate it.
I get it. What you're saying is guilty until proven innocent. That's ridiculous. I mean, you're right. When they screw up the value, they have to put you through this incredibly difficult appeal process. And to try to defend that, I find crazy. I'm not going to defend it. We need to fix it, and that's what we're all about.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. All right, David, you're up next. Citizen Bill Eigel, you're on deck.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is David Stokes, Director of Municipal Policy at the Show Me Institute. We've passed out a very long and detailed testimony that I believe has been shared with you. I want to stress this is different than what my colleague Patrick shared at the Kansas City hearing. That was a very concise piece, just focused on a few Kansas City and Jackson County issues. This testimony is much more broad and generally focused statewide, a number of suggestions and recommendations. So I hope you'll all check that out. I've been working on property tax issues since 2001, when just after I was hired as an aide to the St. Louis County Council, a few days later, my bosses on the council broke the famous drive-by assessment scandal of St. Louis County in 2001, which I have no doubt some people here remember well. Some of the people might have been to those meetings too. And I've been struck in the 25 years since then, where I've been working on these issues, whether with St. Louis County or at the Show Me Institute, and that's why I'm going to focus on one of my numerous suggestions in my testimony in my 1 minute to go here. I do think it's time that we consider stopping the individual assessment of each house every 2 years. And what I mean by that is we have real estate data. We have Zillow and assessors and realtors all over. We can figure out pretty easily what the average weight increase or decrease for a county or a school district or anything may be. And then instead of individually assessing every house to their own and at the end figuring out your average, do that at the start. And if you were to say St. Louis County, the average went up 10%, using a round number, just then raise everybody 10%. And here's the key, because that then allows the tax rate rollback to address everybody equally. You can then roll your rates back 10% so that you don't have the inconsistency that leads to, I went up 5%, but my neighbor went up 20%. And after the rollback, I'll be okay, but my neighbor is going to get walloped. because the rollback is based on the average. And I have a lot more details in the testimony. I farmed that out, even go into more detail on that. It's hard to summarize in a minute.
Thank you.
But I've got a lot of issues there, and I appreciate the time.
So first let me say, it's not part of the inquiry, but you have an impeccable internal clock. When you said you have 1 minute left, you exactly had 1 minute left, so it's very good. Representative Keithley, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is that on? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I have a question regarding the difference in how we tax commercial versus agricultural versus residential and how that plays. And you brought up the schools and the taxes there. How do the tax rates compare and affect with different rates? If I have a county that's more agricultural versus a county like St. Louis County or Jackson County, where we have more suburban or commercial property versus rural.
Well, it's a big difference, and we do have parts in the testimony that go into detail on that. So I hope I'm going to, in the minute I have here, I hope I address it, what you're focused on. But I looked up here, and Representative Byrne, I believe, addressed this several times. It's the difference in assessments and taxes between certain counties, because in 4 counties we have certificates of value, so that the overall assessments, let's leave Jackson County out, that's its own unique catastrophe. The rest of it, there's the inconsistency that drives people crazy, but overall it's probably pretty accurate in St. Louis County. But you get to, so we're in Clayton School District right now. Clayton School District is 95% locally funded by local taxes, mostly local property taxes. Then you go out to rural Missouri, and the average for the foundation formula is over 40% statewide. For state funds, go to that. And in some school districts in rural Missouri, it's over 50%. And the problem that comes from that is so much of that is based on a very low assessment of agricultural property, generally speaking, but also just, I mean, your first speaker in this hearings in Jefferson City was from the Cooper County, if I recall, and he was talking about how hard it is to do proper assessments in Cooper County. And that leads to a problem where the foundation formula through income taxes is funding many rural schools. And, you know, where are those income taxes paid? Mostly St. Louis and Kansas City.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. Any other questions? You're not seeing any. I will take this time, and I will let you use my time to finish your thoughts. You have 2 minutes to finish.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to get back to the inconsistency and how an average-based system will adopt it. So I'm going to talk about my own homes and my 2 neighbors to each side, which is not Representative Hales, although he does live in the same neighborhood. But I'm not talking about his house. So I got lucky this year. Our assessment value went down about 2%. So the neighbor to the right went up about 5%. Neighbor to the left went up 20%. And those 3 very similar houses. Representative Hales knows the neighborhood. They're all built at the same time. Now it's an old neighborhood, so there's been changes between homes. It's understandable that they're not all assessed at the same amount of money. There's been change. But to have one neighbor, and they didn't do any work in their house, go up 20%. So I'm going to come out ahead this year. When they roll the rates back, I'll probably pay a little less on property taxes. My neighbor who went up 5%, they'll be okay. They'll probably see a small increase at most. But the one who went up almost 20%, they're going to get walloped. And that's where this idea of doing it on an average-based system, and I say that, I feel like I'm a $6 million man promo from the, like, we have the technology. Like, we know how to do this. And that way, you're equalizing it for everybody without having to set arbitrary caps on home value increases, which I know a lot of people here probably support that. But as we've seen in California, there's a lot of harms to those sort of arbitrary caps, where inevitably you start having big home value differences between somebody who's lived in a house a long time and a young person who buys the neighboring house. So that's the problem, and that is my idea, and I appreciate the time to expand on it a little more fully.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your testimony. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, up next, Bill Eigel, and then on deck is Niles Stevens. Welcome, sir. Please introduce yourself for those who don't know you, and
great.
We'll move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Bill Eigel, private citizen, and happy to be here to talk about taxes a little bit. I'm going to make my comments very brief. I'm glad to see that the committee is considering property taxes, personal property taxes, what to do about it. My objection to property taxes in general is along 2 lines. One, property taxes function as a tax on unrealized gains. We have individuals in my county, St. Charles County, that have been in their homes for 30 years and are now paying on an assessed value of their home that may be 3 to 4 times what they originally paid for it. Which means that by its very definition, you are punishing individuals who have lived in their home the longest. That doesn't seem right to me. The other problem I have with property taxes is that we rely upon government to tell us what our property is worth. I come from a lot of experience where government does very little accurately or efficiently. In my county, 14 individuals, just 14 individuals are responsible for accurately assessing over $14 billion in property and personal property in St. Charles County. There is no government employee on the planet where I think that would be fair to. So those two dynamics are coming together and creating what is essentially an out-of-control tax burden, and that's why I think you see so many people here tonight. As a reflection of just how difficult the assessors' jobs are, refer back to the greeting that I think Mr. Zimmerman got when we started this evening off. I want to give you a few things that I think you can consider that could actually bring down the burden that could actually maybe even get passed in legislation. Number one, I'd like to see you restrict the ability of cities and counties to give abatements to big corporations on their property taxes. Right now in St. Charles County, we're giving away $23 million every single year just on giveaways to big companies like Amazon that probably don't need the cash. To put that in perspective, our personal property tax bill total is only about $110 million. If we'd stop giving away our money to the biggest corporations, we could get rid of a quarter of our personal property tax burden right now. And two, I know that I'm near the top, so I'm just going to do one more. I'd like to point out something that Representative Roger Reedy and I worked on a couple years ago, and that was the idea of bringing a depreciation schedule to property and personal property. We almost passed a bill that would have put personal property on a 10-year depreciation schedule. So at 10 years, believe it or not, people could own their property. I think we can do for the same for regular property. And certainly I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Representative Murphy, I know you are asking for an inquiry, so you're recognized.
Thank you. I have a question for the former senator and colleague. One of the things we do is we assess value on properties. So if you have a home, and you keep that home up and you improve that home, isn't that what we want people to do?
That's right.
Isn't it something that we would expect them to do? But yet we punish them when they do it.
That's exactly right. And actually, the greatest burdens are being felt by those who have done the most improvements, have lived in the house for the longest periods of time, and actually for a lot of our seniors, who I suspect are here tonight, are paying the biggest increases versus what they paid for.
So in those rundown neighborhoods, we have kind of caused that as a government, saying, if you fix them up, we're going to charge you more taxes.
Representative, I think we can draw a lot of problems back to government, for sure.
You know, I was in Greece one time, and I noticed that there were a lot of buildings that had lower levels that were just empty. And it turned out that their tax code said that if you are building something, we're not going to tax you until you complete the project. And they never completed the project. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here, is we're saying, don't fix your place up, because if you do, we're going to punish you. That's right. What would you say to that?
I think that's right. It feels to me, it's been my experience that in any way that the government is able to get involved in something, particularly something like private ownership, that is supposed to be a transaction between a buyer and a seller, and there's not a whole lot of room for government in the first place, you're going to run into this problem over and over. And what's, I think, frustrating for a lot of people is then the revenues that are then taken from that are often spent inefficiently in the first place. So I think this is going to be a big issue going forward for the next couple of years.
Thank you, sir. Remember, thank you.
Don't do it.
Any, by my own rules set, a Republican has spoke. Any Democrat have an inquiry? Seeing none.
No
Representative, don't go away. Representative Chappell, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
It's on.
Is it? Okay. Sorry, I'm one of the older ones up here. Bill, are you aware of what the taxation rate was prior to the American Revolution by any chance?
Well, it's hard to go back at those numbers. Do you remember directly? Is that what you're saying, Representative? This just became a hostile inquiry.
We're friends, so I'm going to let that go.
It was actually the income tax for the colonies was 1.5% for a max.
Yeah.
And then they began, after the 7 Years' War, to tax property. And even with that, it was still a far smaller percentage of taxation paid than what we deal with. And I just would like your insight on how our forefathers threw a whole bunch of tea in the harbor for a whole lot less than what we see people doing today, and how it is when I hear a woman come up and say that she's worried about losing her home, and she gets questioned as to whether or not she's budgeting properly, my blood boils.
Yeah.
This is not who we are supposed to be as a people.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that the speaker, quite frankly, has already identified that. That's why he's having you good folks do your work. And I'd also like, although I could do a lot with that question that you just asked me, I'd like to also point out one other thing that I'll give as a recommendation that the legislature can do. You mentioned these increases in property taxes. Well, most of the property taxes, in fact, I think all of the property tax increases in St. Charles County have gone up as a result of vote of the people during the April election. The April election is consistently when we get the lowest turnout. And so you have the smallest percentage of the population, sometimes as low as 10%, dictating the largest increases in the tax burden. I'd love to see the legislature move that to a November election.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Sorry.
Thank you for your inquiry.
Thank you, Mr.
Hold your applause.
Don't do
Decorum,
it.
please.
Don't do it.
Before you leave the podium, thank you for your service to the country. For one, as an Air Force vet myself, thank you for your service to the state and all the years that you put into it. So thank you for your testimony.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, guys.
You bet. All right. Niles, you are up next. And on deck is Alex. I'm sorry, I can't. Is it with a Z? Yep, it's coming up there. Okay, sir, please.
Hi, thank you. Niles Stevens. I'm with an organization called Mo Tax Relief Now, which some of you might be familiar with. And also, I'm a Republican committee man here in West St. Louis County, and I'm here to talk about the disproportionate nature of property taxes and how we fund our schools. And first off, just thank you for Speaker Patterson for putting this committee together. Thank you all for serving and coming out to listen to your constituents. I am very hopeful you'll find some meaningful legislation that will make Missouri a low tax, low regulation, high growth state. Now, in St. Louis County, what I'm talking about when I mention disproportionate taxation is that at my home, I'm about $1.30 per $100 value. In other areas of the state, it's as little as 40 or 50 cents per $100 value. At the same time, when it comes to school funding, most of our property tax is going towards the schools, and my child at Eureka High School, she's going to get about $3,900 from the state to help pay for her education, whereas other areas of the state, they're going to receive as much as $8,500 to $9,000 for their children to go to school per pupil. And so in St. Louis County, we're paying more than double the tax, and we are getting less than half of the funding from the state for our children's education. And so I would just ask the committee, do you think that that is a fair, equitable system, and do you think that that follows the Missouri State Constitution that requires a uniformity in the tax code? And I would just like to second Bill Eigel on moving the ballot initiatives for tax issues to November. So that would be my only suggestion. Happy to take an inquiry. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, gentlemen. Representative Keithley, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, one thing that's not lost to me is we were talking about the starter property taxes in this country, and like all taxes, we try to base taxes on whether there's actually a transaction to generate the money to pay it. Well, property tax is the one where we don't really have a transaction. It starts because we have land. You know, if you have land and you were growing crops on it or farming on it, how much land you have directly correlates with how much money you can receive in that transaction. Yet, we have come to a place, and particularly in a place like St. Louis County, where we have a lot of suburban property, and I think the residential taxes are, we tax residential property at a higher rate than we do agricultural land, which is, I think, the result of that you're talking about with how we're over, you know, the money is, more money's coming out of here, yet less money's coming back from the state when we do the equalization payment from the school formula, the foundation formula. But the problem is, not only are we taxing unrealized gains, we are taxing people's primary residences, and the problem with that is this is land that's zoned residential. It's land that the government actively tells you you're forbidden from making money on. Yet we expect you year after year to make that tax. So I appreciate the comment. I guess I never really found a question in this. But if you have anything to comment on that, you can use the rest of the time. Thank you.
No, I agree with you on taxing the unrealized gain. And also, when it comes to property taxes, we are at the burden of what the government does to us when the government calls for COVID regulations that just shut us down and causes rampant inflation, which in turn raises the property values like crazy. You know, we feel the burden of that. When it comes to personal property taxes, I know County Executive Ellman mentioned the cash for clunkers. You know, whenever the government messed up the entire used car market and jacked prices up on everybody's cars, we felt the burden of that and having to pay the higher taxes. So yeah, I agree with you. And St. Louis County is shouldering a lot of that burden.
Thank you, gentlemen. Time for one more inquiry. Representative Boyko, you have?
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate, especially since we're here, actually in this building, we're in Clayton School District, which is the district in the state where the taxpayer gets the least state support and the most local support. And so I am keenly aware of that issue, as is the other members of the committee. I appreciate you raising that. I'm not sure from the chair if that's within the scope of our work or not, but we might make it within the scope of our work anyway. But I appreciate you bringing it up.
Well, I think the school funding and property taxes go hand in hand, since I think, 60-70% of the property tax goes to the schools. I really hope that the committee can mold those issues together when it comes to the school funding formula and property taxes, and hit that on both ends. So.
And I do appreciate that people like in your school district, and I'm in Kirkwood and in Clayton, they do a lot of, the voters are very supportive of their school districts and take a lot of pride in it, and I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, up next, Alex. Sir, did you fill out a witness form?
I did.
Online or in person?
I did, online.
Online, very good, thank you kindly. And then on deck, Debbie McGinnis is on deck. Of course. Yep, it says right there, STC, state tax. Let's go down the, Mark Keeley, is that correct? You'll be on deck. Please, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and thank you, representatives. My name is Alex Simianik. I live here in St. Louis City. I've grown up here most of my life, and I'm here to talk about a 1,000% increase on a residential investment property that was turned to residential, and then what is almost looks like about a $20,000 increase or $24,000 increase on a commercial property that I have here in St. Louis. So. For the residential property, I bought a 4-family in 2018 on a parcel. The investor rule used to be, I've been an investor for about 20 years, and now I manage properties in multiple states. Investor rule used to be about 1% of the value when we're looking at a property. And so I bought this property for $190,000. It was housing drug addicts before, and immediately converted it into 2 townhomes. That went to $22,000 for the same parcel in taxes as of 2024. So the right parcel's been trying to sell ever since and hasn't been able to. They've tried to convert it to long-term rental, or what we call an unfurnished rental, hasn't been able to. The reason why I went from $1,900 to $22,000 is because of the lack of ruling and regulations around the reclassification. So it's reclassified to a short-term rental. The Constitution, Article 10, Section 3 says, taxes shall be uniform upon the same class or subclass of subjects within the territorial limits of the authority levying the tax. Yesterday I was at the Board of Equalization hearing, and when asked how many of the 1,949 furnished rentals that exist today in St. Louis are reclassified, the answer was under 1,000, which means under 50%, and it started at 200. So I would say that is, my concern is the constitutional law there.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any questions, any inquiries for this witness? Seeing none. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you.
Mark is up, yes, and then on deck, Amanda Amanda McCracken, you're on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Mark Keeley. I am the president and CEO of the St. Louis ARC, an agency that provides services and supports to 4,500 individuals in the metropolitan area with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I appreciate that the speaker has given you a whole 4 months to come up with a plan to revise the tax reform for the state of Missouri with about 30 hours of testimony, but I believe that's a daunting task for you, and I think it's disrespectful to all of us. You're hearing many different sides of the story. I appreciate the concerns about the taxes. I too pay taxes on my house, and I'm concerned about those as well. But there are 89 counties in Missouri out of the 114, plus the city of St. Louis, which is separate from that, that have Senate Bill 40 boards. These boards use tax dollars to pay for services related to employment and residential supports for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. This allows them to work and live in their communities, work, pay taxes, and live in their communities. This money is important to their survival. I am concerned that as we look at other tax cuts that are coming, the federal government just passed H.R. 1, which some describe as big and beautiful. I have other adjectives for it, that are going to impact Medicaid in this state. There is going to be $911 billion in cuts of Medicaid over the next 10 years. That affects over 1.3 million Missourians, and you guys are going to have to come up with how are you going to fund that, because our Constitution says any cuts in Medicaid, Missouri has to make up.
Thank you, gentlemen. Representative Chappell, you have an inquiry. You are recognized.
I do, Mr. Chair. Sir, thank you for coming. I have in the past in Polk County, I fought for the SB 40 board. And so I'm well aware of how important it is. And each of those individuals represents families that without that support from the SB 40 board, the entire families and their circle of structure would be deleteriously affected. But if that funding comes to you from another source, do you care?
As long as people continue to be living their lives out in the community. My biggest concern is I've been in this field for 46 years. I helped close down institutions in this country and move people out of those situations. I am hearing discussions, not in this state, but in other states, that are talking about building institutions for people with disabilities again. I cannot see my 46-year career wiped out by decisions like this.
Well, I understand, and as you correctly stated, that's not being discussed here.
Right.
But you're concerned about the funding.
I am concerned.
Not the methodology by which it's collected.
But I want you to take your time. I don't think 4 months is enough time.
Well, I can appreciate that 4 months is not a lot of time, but the reality of it is what we're looking at is whether or not the methodology is correct and whether or not the burden is being placed too heavily on individuals, because it's not just the SB 40 boards, it's all of the other political subdivisions. And so I'm just asking you, as long as the funding is what you think it needs to be, you don't care what the methodology is.
As long as the services continue, I do not care where the money comes from.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any other inquiries for this witness? Seeing none, gentlemen, thank you very much. Amanda, you're up, that is to say. And then Byron Keelan is on deck.
Hi, good evening. My name is Amanda McCracken, and I own and manage 6 short-term rental properties and 6 long-term rentals in the city of St. Louis. There we go. Okay. I'm not good at this, so I apologize. So I own and manage 6 short-term rentals and 6 long-term rentals in the city of St. Louis. I've acquired these over the last 30 years. This is my sole source of income, and I personally handle all the day-to-day operations, painting, cleaning, everything. I'm not a large corporation, it's just me. And take great care of my guests, have excellent feedback, superhost status. I'm here because about 3 years ago, I get a tax bill that doubled. They have reclassified my short-term rentals from from residential to commercial. So basically, all of my taxes just doubled. There was no warning, there was nothing. They just doubled. That has really placed a financial burden on the small independent operators like myself, and it becomes really overwhelming because, I'm now required to pay double taxes and then all these other fees that I'm being charged by the city, and it's about ready to put me out of business, which is unfortunate because I love what I do and I love my guests, and I get up here and then I go blank. But I do hope that you all will consider that this burden, the use of the property is the same. People come, they spend the night, they enjoy their families, and if they're there 31 days, then they're long-term. If they're there 28 days or 5 days, then they're short-term, and I get double taxed. And I will say one more quick thing. One of my properties increased from 2022. This is my residential long-term. And from 2022 to 2025, I have an increase of 89.6% on one house. Now, that is my residential, so luckily, that's not a commercial one.
Thank you.
But, yeah.
Thank
sorry,
you.
I'm sorry.
Questions for this witness? Representative Dale Taylor, I saw your hand first. You're recognized. Okay. Representative Boyko? All right.
I'll be quick. Thank you for joining us. And we've had several testimonies along this line of homes that are being used for short-term rentals, Airbnb, what have you. I have some pretty firm beliefs in this area, especially around businesses. If it's not too personal, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us what the dollar was, what was the dollar tax when it was a residential, and what was the dollar tax when it was a commercial?
It does depend on which house, but let's just say the one of them, it went from $2,500 to about $5,000. And I will say, as a short-term rental owner, that the city of St. Louis collects a 30% tourism tax. Just me alone, my houses paid the city over $40,000 in tourism tax. So they don't even acknowledge all the good that we bring. And yeah, it looks like I make a lot of money, but by the time I pay my mortgages, my taxes, my insurance, all the fees, it's kind of up in the air if I should even stay in the business. And this is the only thing I have. I don't have a retirement with a company. This is my retirement. These homes are my retirement. I've worked for 30 years to get them. Now I should be trying to relax a little bit, but instead I'm having to work harder because I'm getting hit in so many different ways.
You mentioned that the property tax went up from about $2,500 to $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
You also said that in addition to that, you're paying a tourism tax?
My guests who come into the city, every guest has to pay a 30% tourism tax. Airbnb collects it directly from what they pay us, and then they pay the city. So $40,000, I don't even know where that money goes to. Certainly doesn't benefit me. I don't know where that money goes to. I think it goes to the tourism for the city, but I don't know.
I asked specifically about
Representative, I need to cut you short. 2 minutes goes
I'm
very
sorry.
fast, I know. So, ma'am, that's okay. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Byron Keelan, I think I called you up, and then on deck is Sean Ordway.
Good evening. My name is Byron Keelan, president of the Freedom Principle Missouri, and I'm here today on behalf of our members who care about our fundamental right to own property. Property taxes aren't just a bill, we consider them as an infringement on our basic right to own our own homes. If you can't pay the ever-increasing tax, the county can seize your property. To us, this is not home ownership, it's perpetual tenancy. St. Louis County, which has the highest effective property tax rate in the state at 1.24%, which is well above the state average of 0.91%. And recently, the 2025 assessment spiked by over 13%. These rates are pricing hardworking people out of their homes. My property taxes personally, the assessment increased more than 20%, and my payment the taxes that I got to pay increased by 23% from 2024. So we asked this committee in the legislature to think boldly. We believe the best way to solve this problem is to replace or cap the tax, the property tax, and even consider eliminating the personal property tax with some type of consumption tax. Additionally, we ask you to consider the impacts Missouri's property, personal property, and income tax structures have on our economic development. We've seen many large corporations announce investments in the United States totaling $2.56 trillion. None of those companies are coming to Missouri. They're going to states, oddly enough, like California, New York, and Massachusetts. So in closing, let's end a system that punishes ownership rather than rewarding it, and a system that promotes economic development. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Not seeing any from there. I do have one, sir, if you don't mind. Sure. So an inquiry about your move to consumption tax, or you're saying that that would be a good thing. I, too, am a fan of the idea of a consumption tax. But in a minute and 51 seconds, can you describe to me how we would do a consumption tax as it relates to rural counties who have no, who come here for their consumables, if you will?
I would say is that there's probably, other states that we can take examples from. Tennessee, outside of Nashville, doesn't have many large metropolitan areas, yet they have a more of a sales tax process than a property tax rate, and they don't even have personal property taxes in that state, nor do they have an income tax, and you see everybody fleeing to them. So I think that there are other states out there that we can certainly look at as examples. Do we have to be exactly like them? No. But I think that we can certainly, we have enough smart people, particularly on this committee and in the legislature, I know, that can come up with a solution and a tax that is fair for the rural and the suburban areas.
I appreciate that. As I said, I'm a fan of the idea of a consumption tax. I have struggled and do have difficulty trying to figure out how we can make that work without creating some extraordinary, complicated system of gathering money and sending it back to rural communities.
Yeah,
so
and like I said, to us, there's other states, like I said, Tennessee's one, Florida, I think, is another, New Hampshire's is another one that has very low property tax rates, and Alabama itself too. So I think if those states can do it, we can do it.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Oh, you good? Okay. Sorry. Listen, I'm sorry if I miss anybody. If you have an inquiry, so it's not intentional. Sean Ordway. My apologies. On deck, Pam Kluter? Did I say that properly?
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable ladies and gentlemen of West Wood. My name is Sean Ordway. I am the newly appointed assessor of the city. Can you hear me now? Thank you.
Yeah, start over for me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. My name is Sean Ordway. I'm the newly appointed assessor in the city of St. Louis. I'm the previous elected assessor from Cole County back in 2000, 2004. I then went to the State Tax Commission, where I was the manager of the ratio study section from 2007 to 2013. Joined the city of St. Louis in 2013 as the deputy assessor, and just recently appointed assessor. Just want to give you some perspective from the city of St. Louis, try to go through some facts and figures quickly. We were an MOU county with the tax commission in 2025. We sent out 95,000 reassessment notices. That's fairly typical for us. 36,000 15% notices. We would like to note that those 15% notices have actually improved the process. We used to have 1,000 to 2,000 BOE appeals. Going back to 2005, that would be our norm. In 2023, we had 742. We had a major reassessment this year, a little bit higher than we have in the past reassessments. Our appeals are actually down versus those prior years. We're at 800 and about 50 this year. We were expecting over 2,000. So we do think that's had a large benefit to the process. Basically what's happening is because we do preliminary values in all Missouri counties as of March 1st, that tells us how many 15% increases we might have. We're getting that information out in March instead of in May, so that helps. For-rate process, that's something I'm going to be discussing with the new administration. We had a 15% residential increase. When you add in commercial and ag, that takes us down to 10%. When you add in personal property, that takes us to 6%. 2.9% CPI, so that's a 3% rollback basically. So you're a taxpayer, you had a 15% increase, you have a 3% rollback, you got about a 12% bump. And so if we're going to do everything we can with what's available right now to try to fix that. Senior tax freeze, immensely popular. We had 6,600 people qualify in 2024, and we're at 8,500 this year. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Don't go away. We have an inquiry for one. I know Representative Keithley, you're recognized to inquire.
Regarding the appeals, I haven't had the chance to ask this question of someone else, but what is there any punishment? Is there any disincentive if any? What happens to a taxing jurisdiction, or well, to the county or to an assessor or a collector if they lose the appeal?
That's a good question. Obviously, it's just going to have effect on the assessed value.
Sure, the amount goes. If I appeal my assessment, right, and I win, my assessment goes up. Well, what else happens? I guess what my real question is, what is stopping the inflation of the assessments to just let the person go through the appeal? What motivation is there for an assessor to get it right? Is there something that happens that ensures, other than just the good nature of an assessor's office, to make sure they get it right?
Yeah. So it's all about fairness and equity. So from my perspective, we want to get it right. That's what every assessor, I believe, actually wants to do. And I have a real hard time in an appeal process or any process if somebody can show that we've done something that's not fair or equitable for them. So I would not be favorable of a process that does not allow an adequate appeals situation that would allow anybody that really disagrees with that value to have that consideration. When we look at the appeals, we do look at that property, but we're looking at all the ones around it. So we do want to make sure that we're very fair and consistent.
Thank you.
Sorry, Representative Taylor, I've got two in front of you, and I can only call on one. Representative Boyko, you're recognized for an inquiry.
So earlier I asked this of the county assessor, so I'll ask you as well, whether there's state statute, we're trying to make it easier for people who are appealing, make it easier to get to a fair number, removing barriers, that sort of thing. Are there laws that are on the books that make your job harder, or would make it, or are there laws we could put on the books that would make it easier for you to do what you're trying to do and come up with a fair number?
Yeah. To answer that, I'm going to kind of go broader in scope. So, we assess property, we value property. We're property valuers. I've been a real estate appraiser all my life, and that's what I do. If you don't have the tools to do that, it's very difficult. It doesn't matter what county or where you are. So I would say making that information available, sales information especially. And we've talked about the 4 COV counties. When I was in Cole County, the Cole County Board of Realtors in 1985 voted for the assessor to have access to MLS data. I know there's some counties, at least when I was at the State Tax Commission, there was several counties on the Kansas border that got Heartland MLS data and had that data. And if you're trying to value property, you need information to do so. To try to tell the assessor that you're going to go out and value property and then say you have to do it with your hands tied behind your back, that's really not a fair process as well. Some of the requirements, so right now, anything that can be done to actually give us more boots on the ground for the inspection processes. You cannot assess property from the desk. Technology is great, technology is expensive, but you have to go out and look at property. You have to look at the neighborhoods. You have to do that. And so even just maintaining the 15% inspections, or what we do is during every board we contact every taxpayer and ask them if they want an inspection for anybody who appeals to the board. Doing all of that is very cumbersome on the county, and if we could have some more help in that regard, we would do a better job in being able to carry out those mandates.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Thank you for your testimony, sir.
Thank you very much.
Pam Kluter, did I say that properly? I don't want to skip over you. Anyone named Pam in the audience? Okay, I'm going to move past. If you show up, we'll come back to you. Jeff Woolman, you are up, and then on deck is Alan Liederbrand.
Chairman,
yes,
members
please.
of the committee, thank you for the time to speak in front of you. My name is Jeff Woolman, and I'm in my 6th year of service in the Melville School District as a board member. And Melville, like a number of the districts in the St. Louis County area, is heavily locally funded. In fact, Melville gets only 15% of its funding from the state. About 80% of it comes from county, and 5% comes from federal. So part of the thing that goes on with some of the reasons why property tax inequity is going on in the county is because of the fact that state funding is dissimilar between areas of the state that you live in. Rural counties, 40, 50, sometimes even up to 70% state funding. Counties here and districts here, sometimes as little as 5% like Clayton. So one of the things obviously you're doing is finding ways to fix inequities in the property tax system. One way that we should look at that is tie it to the work you're doing on fixing the foundation formula, because that foundation formula is 20 years old. Obviously, it's time to revise it, and linking property tax work to revising property tax inequities and issues with assessments and the like, and tying that work to fixing the foundation formula and leaving those two items together is probably the best way to help out, because if areas like my area in South St. Louis County had the average of 28% state funding, we would be less reliant on local property taxes, and obviously that would help burdens on local taxpayers for their property tax inequities. So I'm thinking as you go through this process, linking it to the foundation formula revision is probably a very good idea, and obviously that's a process that's going on for another year and a half, but I think that's probably something that needs to be lockstep with property tax work.
Self-timer, I like it.
Yep.
Yeah, good job. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony. While you work on that, I'll just let the folks know here, and most of you probably know this already, but not only are we working on this issue, there's also a joint committee between the Senate and the House that are working on income tax and other related things. And then there's also something going on with the foundation formula and the knowledge that it's very old and needs to be looked at. So this is all encompassing, all of it. So thank you. Any inquiries for this? Oh, yes, that's right. Representative Murphy, you were recognized to inquire.
Thank you. One of the things we've discussed in previous hearings is the loophole in the Hancock Amendment, whereas school boards and political subdivisions are required to roll back, as assessments go up, they're required to roll back the rate so that, in essence, they only get to keep a small amount. Now, that loophole was put in where if there was a ballot issue in that year, you didn't have to roll it back. Now, Melville took the opportunity to put a 30-cent assessment on the ballot, but yet when the assessments came out and they had gone up 18% across the board, you all chose to keep that 18%, which came up to almost 90 cents. How do you square that with your taxpayers?
Well, we looked at the fact that the tax rate remained the same, and the assessed values of the properties obviously increase the effective value of those pennies per $100. So as we looked at trying to find means to best utilize that revenue, we looked at using it for capital improvements that would allow us to work past needing a bond issue that would save the district $12 million over the course of this work. So
Yet you're putting that bond issue on the ballot in November, are you not?
There's not a bond issue on the ballot in November now.
You're voting on one? Have you decided not to do it?
We have an item on our agenda for tomorrow that we're looking at adjusting an existing levy and taking it and keeping it going.
Are you calling it a no tax increase levy?
We're stating it as a increase, a difference of the fact that we keep the levy as it is. There will be no increase in it, but if the voters decide they don't want it, it will reduce the levy by that amount.
Yeah. We've heard this over and over throughout the state, and we find it, there's never been a bond issue that expired that didn't get renewed as a no tax increase. How do you square that?
We put it up as a measure for the voters, and if the voters decide they want to change that, that is
Do
their
you think
opportunity
if we
to do
put that
so.
in November, it would pass?
That depends. If we're putting it up on for a vote tomorrow, most likely that would be the time it would be going for.
Okay.
Gentlemen, your time has expired. Appreciate it. Representative Steinhall, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you. Thank you. Mostly I want to make a comment. I agree with you 100%. I'm very concerned that we're doing this work at the same time that we're working on this foundation formula, because when we pull from our school funding two different ways, we have the potential to really mess it up. So I hope people will hear what you're saying and that we will make sure that we're doing that together. The other thing, another person testified about this earlier, and you
The
also...
gentleman for MoTax reform, I believe, was
Yes.
like about 6 or 7
I think
people
it's
in front of me.
really important that this community be hearing what you're saying about the fact that many of the people in this room that are, paying these taxes, their state taxes are holding up rural districts.
Right.
Much more than the money coming back here.
Inequitable, that difference in state funding versus local funding, because obviously St. Louis County is heavily local funded because there's lots of suburban properties and lots of retail properties.
Right.
In a
And
rural
it's-
county, that's not nearly the
Yes,
case.
and it's not just the foundation formula, it's things like the baseline teacher salary grant, the small schools grant, there's all of these
Right.
things. And the reason I think that ties into this is when we think about what changes we can make on the personal property tax level, and we say things like, let's just leave it up to counties, it's because there are some counties that are their property taxes are super, super low, and they're able to keep their schools because you all are paying more for them. So thank you for bringing
And
that up.
obviously, yes, the foundation formula is just one piece of that, but that's the component that's being reviewed right now through the end of next year.
Yep, 30 seconds. Go ahead. You're recognized for inquiry. And 30 seconds from when you get the mic.
It was just stated to remind the room that their property tax pay for rural schools, but that's not true. The state tax commission said the only thing our property tax pay for is the blind pension. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
I thought I said their state taxes were supplementing local schools. If I said property taxes, sorry about.
Oh,
their
sorry,
state
we didn't,
taxes,
down here, that's what
there's-
we thought, so we just wanted to
Sorry,
clarify, thank you.
No, I appreciate that.
It's good to
It's
be
state
clear.
taxes, the money's not coming back to their schools here, it's going more to those rural districts. Thank you for clarifying.
Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony. Really appreciate it. You want to share that with everyone there, Representative Boyko? Yeah. Gentlemen, please introduce yourself. I forgot where I was on the list, so this will help me get back on track.
Okay, my name's Alan Lederbrand. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I live in Jefferson County. Unfortunately, mine went up, got reassessed at 10%, not as bad as some people have. But I'm on the Saline Valley Fire Board, and we just got our numbers for this coming year. And with the CPI being 2.9, we're going to have to roll back our levy to give more than half the money, the increase back, we can't collect. So, which is following the Hancock, 5% or CPI, whichever is lower. So why can't we do that for your assessments? Why do we need to increase, the assessments 20% if all we can, maximum that we can collect is 2.9. So therefore, technically, let's spread it equally that everybody pays the same amount, which I kind of agree. Therefore, the assessment should only go up 2.9% maximum. And if it gets to eventually, if you think your house is not, then appeal it, drop the total value. But if you're following the Hancock, the assessed valuation shouldn't go more than what the total tax that's going to be collected. So I think that would be a simple solution. And it would keep a lot of people in their homes. It wouldn't be, one neighbor's getting 0 and another neighbor's getting 20. And maybe the one that's going up 20% is a little old lady who's having problems to stay in her home, where if it only went up 2%, or depends on the CPI, she might, which goes along with her Social Security, so she is getting a little bit more money because Social Security is based on the CPI. It would keep things balanced, especially for those over 65, just as an idea. Also, I understand, I'm concerned about these other counties. They're being forced to use an International Assessors Association, which I saw went out to their website. They're very heavily in DEI. So I thought, why are we doing that? Why are we using an international company to be used to assess properties here in Missouri?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate it. I didn't mention it. Ron Hardick, you're up. And then on deck is John Harding, if that's correct. Please proceed, sir.
I'm Ron Hardicke from Owensville, Missouri. I'm a Southern District Commissioner in Gasconade County, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you. Last week I attended the Missouri Association of Counties summer meeting, and there was a workshop on tax reform, and I would encourage you to look at the proposal that group's going to bring to you. I'm not speaking for them, but I agree with what they were talking about at that meeting. I'm not going to rehash the assessment deal because there's been a lot of talk about that. I think the thing that you have to consider is when this reassessment started years ago, everybody, until the last few speakers, the rollback hadn't been mentioned much. It's been discussed, so I won't rehash that, but it's important that all political subdivisions have to roll back, and that has been altered since the original Hancock Amendment. So you're going to have to look at that to make it equitable. The other thing, I would ask the legislature to not keep doing little fixes. We threw out Senate Bill 190 and then 756 to fix that, and then Senate Bill 3. The people are confused. They don't know where to go. Our county did not do anything with Senate Bill 190 because the amount that people were going to get back was little to nothing for the amount that our county would have to invest to do that. And I'm really glad we didn't, because now we've got 2 more fixes. So where's it gonna end? So, thank you.
Don't go away. Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. Representative Fowler, you're recognized to inquire.
Yes. There we go. Okay. You mentioned that the Missouri Association of Counties is going to be bringing something forward. Could you elaborate on that, what that proposal may be?
I can't, because I was only an observer in that meeting. So they'll get with the governor and the leadership of the House and Senate. So,
any other inquiries? Who's down there? Yep, it is. So it is the rule I made. It's your turn. So, Representative, you're recognized for inquiry.
Thank you. When we've gone around the state, each location we go has kind of a different topic that comes up. It's interesting that we haven't talked about Hancock much tonight. I don't feel like in And since you brought it up, I have been thinking, some suggestions that have been given in other areas have been, it's too bad we couldn't bring the Hancock down to the individual level, you know, to cap on individuals instead of the entire taxing entity. As I try to think about that in my head, I don't think there's a practical way to do that. And I just wondered if you, in your experience, would know whether that's possible.
I'd have to think about that, but
Okay.
it doesn't, on the surface, I would agree that it doesn't seem possible.
Yeah. Okay, sorry to put you on the spot. You just seem like you had some knowledge about it.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. I think I had John up next. John Harding. Is it Harding, perhaps? Hartwig. And then on deck, Billy Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee, for allowing me to speak. I am in the unenviable position of having lived in the same house for 83 years in St. Louis County. And I can only recall that the taxes, when I first started realizing that taxes were being assessed, was back in the 70s or 80s. And at that time, the taxes were $600. I'm now paying $7,700. So that gives you an idea of the long look. And this is what a lot of people here are concerned with too, that having purchased a house or acquired a house, you're living in that, you know what, at the time of purchase, what your capabilities are financially. And you know what you can do on real estate taxes, interest, insurance, utilities. I think it's a much better system to return to the old system that we had, as I recall, where you assess at the time of purchase, and you may jack the rate per hundred up. That's obviously would change, but until the property changes, and that would solve your senior citizens' problems of being taxed out of their houses. The second thing is in my dealings with the assessors, I would say that one thing I keep hearing is highest and best use. That's how we're assessing the property. I think it should be higher and current use, because my property is sitting between two McMansions, and I've got a 50s house, and they're trying to move mine up to almost $1 million, which is it was like $300,000 in 2020. So those are the issues that I've faced, and I think consideration of the old system needs to be reevaluated. Thank you, gentlemen. Don't run away just yet. Appreciate your testimony. Representative Murphy, you're recognized to inquire.
Hi. Just out of curiosity, if you were willing to share, what was that house worth 86 years ago?
83 years ago. I moved in 1942. My parents moved me in.
Okay.
I was 6 months old.
What do
and
you
I've
think
lived in the same house here in Clayton.
What do you think they paid for the house?
I know what my father paid. He paid $15,000 for the house.
So the taxes today are half the value of what the original.
Correct.
God bless us.
Yes. Inquiry down here to the left side of it. Representative Boyko, you're recognized to inquire.
Yeah, this is your second solution I think is really interesting, but I want to talk a little more about the one of tax based on the last sale of the property, because we've heard that before. The concern is, like you mentioned, the rate has to go up, right? And so a lot of people, I know it might not be true in your case, but a lot of people are buying their homes in their late 20s, early 30s. They're scrimping and trying to save to get, a house that they can be in. If the rate is higher, they can't afford as nice of a house, right? And to give an example, in my case, the house next to mine just sold for more than 3 times what I paid for my house. And so if we adopt your system, for the rest of the time that my neighbor owns his property, him and his 2 kids, me and my 2 kids, he's paying taxes that are 3 times higher than mine. And so there's an issue of fairness, I think, that goes along with that. The ambulance comes to both of our houses. The school educates both of our kids. Do you have anything to say to to that to maybe address the fairness of having neighbors who are paying such a different amount just based on when that property was bought?
Well, I would say that the fairness depends upon your viewpoint, of course. But I still think that when you initially buy a house, you're looking at the economics, and that's the time you decide what level of house you can afford to purchase and support. And that's, to me, it's the best way. You can still play around with other the rate per 100 or various other mechanisms to do what you want. But I'm just looking from the standpoint of senior citizens and someone who intended to live in a house from the time he was born till the time he died, hopefully.
Yeah, and I understand that, and there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just also sympathetic to,
Yeah,
for example,
thank you.
members of the military who don't have the option to own the house the whole time and that sort of thing. So, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I believe I called Billy Brennan will be on deck, and then next is Nancy Delcourt. I think I said that right. You're on deck.
Good evening. Name's Billy Brennan. I'm the Director of Public Relations and Government Affairs for the St. Louis Zoo. Thank you for hosting this tonight, and I want to say thank you. I can definitely tell you are all actively listening to the residents here, and I appreciate everywhere you've gone across the state for these hearings. Really appreciate that. You've heard here, you've heard at other places, from fire districts, schools, libraries, some incredible vital services. I'm here to hopefully make sure you understand and add the St. Louis Zoo to that list. I also want to take a moment to thank all the taxpayers in this room from St. Louis City and St. Louis County. Because of their support, we are one of the leading zoos in the nation, one of the few free zoos in the country, and one of the leading tourist destinations in the great state of Missouri. We benefit greatly from property tax that this region, the citizens of St. Louis City and St. Louis County wanted. They voted for it. For that, I appreciate it, and I felt it important for me to be here representing an organization that receives property tax revenue. Last year, we released an economic impact report for Wildcare Park. This is a safari park in North St. Louis County that's going to be opening up in 2027. When we came out with that report, it was estimated that over the next decade, the combined economic value of the zoo and the Wildcare Park to the region is over $2.5 billion. So, the zoo and the Wildcare Park are economic engines for the region. I'm here to explain where St. Louis County and St. Louis County property tax dollars go to at the zoo, and that the zoo is a good steward of those dollars, and I believe good ROI. Property tax revenue represents 25% of the operating revenue at the St. Louis Zoo. Those dollars cover salaries and benefits for core and support areas for the zoo. They keep those animals inside the zoo. They include animal care and animal health, some admin support, finance, HR, purchasing, security, you name it, right? From a residential
Gentlemen,
standpoint...
I'm going to have about 10 seconds.
Okay, from a residential standpoint, I can say that I do feel that people do see the ROI on it. Access to a world-class zoological facility, a family-friendly attraction, a zoo that's community-oriented and does educational programming.
Thank you, gentlemen. Without a doubt, St. Louis has a great zoo. I do enjoy visiting. Representative Murphy, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Yeah, thank you. The zoo is great. It's one of the good things about the tax that we voted for, and we did vote for that, is that you give us a return on investment. What do you charge us to get into the zoo?
The St. Louis Zoo shall be forever free for all.
Free for all, including those that didn't vote for it. When you expanded out into the county, you put a sales tax on the.
Yes, sir.
And St. Louis County passed that, did they not?
Every single voting precinct overwhelmingly passed it. Yes, sir.
St. Louis City, which is the city zoo, did not.
That is correct. We could not get it on the ballot in St. Louis City.
It's a little absurd, isn't it? Okay. Have you thought about the outlying areas that don't pay for the zoo? Or they're not, you should charge maybe an admission to St. Charles, who takes care of it?
Sure. In reference to the sales tax, I can tell you that we tried to get the collar counties on that ballot, but it couldn't make it to the floor.
Did you ask St. Charles to do that?
St. Charles, Franklin, and
they-
Jefferson.
They said no,
Yes, sir.
but they come free.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other, Representative Del Taylor, you are recognized to inquire.
Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you very much for coming. I'm going to share with everyone a brief story. I grew up, in fact, my district includes St. Louis Zoo, and I grew up just maybe 6 or 8 blocks or so. My brothers and I, when we were young boys, would spend our entire summer at Forest Park. Not just the zoo, the Jewel Box, the Science Center. And some of you have heard that the Science Center would host science shows. And I love the science shows. I would go back, and I started recreating some of those very science experiments at home. And when I talked to the curators, and then I would go to the library and check out books on how to recreate those things. And I am the engineer that I am today because the zoo, the Science Center, and these things were free access, were free admission. And I am so thankful that the St. Louis City Founding Fathers agree that we are going to tax ourselves to make this resource available to everyone that wants to visit it. Anyone that wants to visit the Science Center, that wants to visit the zoo, that wants to learn about art museums. So if you wouldn't just share about a little bit more about what's included in the Zoo Museum Taxing District, what services, and how is it that these things are free, or no admission?
And in 42 seconds, if you will.
There are 5 institutions that make up the Zoological Museum District. So it's the St. Louis Zoo, the Science Center, as you mentioned, the Art Museum, the Botanical Garden, and the History Museum. So with all 5 of those, they represent the Zoo Museum District.
Do you have any perspective on on how many people visit the zoo and how many people visit some of these other institutions?
Sure. So I can tell you from the zoo's perspective, last year we hit about 2.8 million. I'm hoping we will hit that number again this year.
A lot of them are young kids.
Yes, sir.
How well did the Romeo and Juliet do? How well was that subscribed to?
It's an innovative thing that we've tried this year, in which I'm so glad you brought that up, that we've tried out something new this year. It did pretty well for its first year.
Okay, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Appreciate it. Get me back on track. Just go ahead. When you introduce yourself, I'll be back on track.
Nancy Delcourt,
Thank you.
St. Charles. Thank you guys for hosting this, putting this on. Citizens have a basic right to own property, and it's wrong for our government to place undue burden on property owners, even to the point of taxing us out of our homes. We've heard from some of the elderly, which I fit into that camp, that when I first moved into my house, the house property value was $189,000. And the property taxes were, I don't remember what they were, but they were way less than they are now. Yes, local government provides services that some would say are needed. Some are needed, maybe some aren't as needed. But frankly, many of the services aren't needed. There's no greater need than for people to be able to stay in their homes, especially people that have worked hard and paid off their homes. Think of seniors that have paid off their home, lived in their home, and it's paid off for 20, 30 years. The property taxes keep going up and up and up. They're on fixed income. They can't afford to pay these taxes. People being able to stay in their homes should take priority over public services. We need less government, not more. Inflation is killing us. That's all.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Floor down. Who is it? Oh, Representative Warwick, you're recognized.
No.
Burns.
Representative Burns.
As a representative for St. Charles County, I agree that something has to be done. That's why a lot of us are here. And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your testimony. Thank you. Now, I didn't mention on deck Joan Bray, and then Elaine Powers, you were on deck. Did I say Joan? Joanne? Joan? Joan, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Joan Bray. I had the privilege of serving 10 years in the Missouri House, like you, and 8 years in the Senate. My purpose in being here today is to focus attention on the role of property tax in funding Missouri's public schools. During my tenure in the legislature, I participated twice in the process of rewriting the school funding formula in 1993 and 2005. While serving, I represented 10 school districts in St. Louis County and came to understand firsthand the impact of the formula on each of them. I don't want to repeat what other people have said, so I'm just going to go through and make a few comments that I think either reinforce or something a little bit new. I understand that the governor has this task force on reviewing and recommending the changes to the state's funding formula, and I would posit that this committee and that committee are inextricably linked. It's impossible to understand the school foundation formula in various parts of the state without understanding the impact of property taxes in funding the schools in each area. On the whole, schools in Missouri get a smaller share of their funding from state government than do schools in any other state. So Missouri is number 50 for state funding for schools. I understand why your speaker appointed this committee to look at property taxes, because they put so much financial pressure on families and single-person households. Over the years, an enormous imbalance has taken place in Missouri generally, and in the St. Louis area specifically, where state government provides an increasingly smaller share of public schools' budgets.
Ma'am?
Yes.
I'm going to have to cut you off
Yeah,
right there.
okay.
So there are questions, I know. So
Can I just make one more comment?
Let's get to the questions first, and then Representative Chappell, you're recognized to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Bray, you were senator as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'm trying to be.
I was termed out of both houses.
All right, I'm trying to give you all the due recognition. Is it your understanding, since you worked the foundation formula twice, is it your understanding that the state of Missouri is designed to have the significant portion of the funding of education come from the local districts?
Well,
I mean, you wrote it, right?
Pardon me?
You helped write it.
Well, I participated in the process.
So it was designed that way, correct?
Well, I think it was. I think it was designed that way.
You didn't do it by accident.
Yeah.
You all believed in local control and local influence.
No, I don't think that's entirely true, because
well, that's what we hear all the time.
Not in every.
I don't have a lot of time, ma'am. I don't mean to be rude, but it was designed that way, correct?
It was designed for both local and state taxes, and it was designed. It morphed into and became where some districts got local taxes primarily, and other districts got state taxes primarily.
But the fact that the state of Missouri is 50th in state taxation going to education was a design feature.
I'd like to think not.
Well, I don't know why you all wrote it that way then. I mean, this is like, and I've said this before, but this is like saying this cat is the worst dog I've ever seen in my entire life. One more question, Senator, and with your experience and expertise, I've asked this question all over, and I just can't get an answer. I'm hoping you can give me one. How given that these people are worried about losing their homes, how much is enough?
Well, I think that there needs to be some good creative thinking among all these great minds, and maybe you can.
So you don't have a dollar. You don't have a bottom line. This would be enough to get it all done.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
I can't find anybody to answer that question for
well,
me.
It may be an unanswerable question.
Gentlemen, I'm going to have to stop you
Thank
there.
you, sir.
So, ma'am, thank you. In case you don't know, this is a very dear subject in his to his heart. And I can't disagree with him. Who's up down here to my left? Representative Hales, you're recognized to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for coming and your patience, but I was hoping you might
I got
be
here
able
at 4:45, so I'd make sure to get in on early.
I know. I wanted to see if you would like to finish what you were trying to say.
I just wanted to just to say that a couple of things. That you know, the Constitution declares that the state must allocate at least 25% of its revenue, excluding interest and sinking funds, annually to support free public schools. I don't think the folks who conceived and wrote that requirement envisioned the huge disparities that have developed over the years and the state's distribution of its resources. What my experience was that you can write a formula having to do with tax income, but the economy changes, so you have to stay on top of it. You have to make it so that you can make it work with the way the economy changes, and that's what I was there 18 years, and we did it twice, so it's been too long since it's been done, and I think that's part of it is the funding formula needs to be more elastic in terms of being able to be changed, and I do think that this committee and the governor's special committee should be like this, because you really can't address one without the other.
Any follow-up, Representative? Okay. I would just say, ma'am, some of us just came back from the Southern Legislative Conference, and speaking with the states who make up that, I think Alabama, one of the Carolinas, just went through this process with their foundation formula, and it was decades old as all. So yes, I think we're due and behind, and I can't agree more that we are tied together, because one can't live without the other. I'm sorry, except for me, we've already had 2 inquiries of this witness, so we're going to let her step down and step aside. So thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Have a great day. All right, up next, Lane Powers, you were on deck. And then Karen Beck, you were on deck next.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony regarding property taxes this evening. My name is Elaine Powers. I'm Executive Director of an organization called Rebuilding Together St. Louis, and I am here this evening to speak specifically about one way that property taxes actually come back and benefit older adults. We certainly have heard a whole lot about older adults tonight and the impact on paying property taxes. We'll talk a little bit about how some of that may come back to some of the folks in our community. So our organization supports older adult homeowners so that they can age in place in their own homes more safely and independently by providing no-cost home repairs for those who cannot financially or physically repair the home themselves. We also help to build generational wealth through homeownership, and we also help to prevent future vacancies. The households that we serve typically rely on Social Security as their sole source of income. With an average household income of around $23,000 per year, there is not much room in that budget for ongoing maintenance and repairs. Yet, these older adults have invested decades into their homes and their neighborhoods. About a quarter of the people who we serve are U.S. military veterans, and many of them are also living with disabilities. Their presence on the street where they live provides stability, and they always want to stay in their own home. This is where the St. Louis City Senior Fund comes in. As a property tax funded entity in St. Louis, the Senior Fund has provided critical funding that helps us to help our older neighbors. These repairs address issues such as fall and fire prevention. We help to keep the weather outside by fixing roofs, all kinds of other repairs. The property taxes in St. Louis City support this work through the Senior Fund. The Senior Fund supports us and other nonprofit agencies providing critical services to our older neighbors. Over the last 8 years, my organization alone has supported repairs for over 160 older adults and veterans in the community. I am proud to be a city resident, and I am proud to know that a portion of my taxes supports older adults in my community through this fund.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions, inquiries for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Karen Beck, okay. On deck, Nathan Monks. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Karen Beck, and my husband and I have owned our Webster Groves home for 21 years. We were shocked when we received our current property tax assessment. Our assessment increased 23%. We had no permitted improvements. Yet our home, according to St. Louis County, has increased $136,000 in value. To support the increased value, our home is compared to 5 homes within a half a mile. According to real estate information and pictures that we were able to look at, many of these homes have amenities and improvements that our home does not have. Surprisingly, the assessment of these 5 homes has increased between 9 and 15%, and all of them are assessed at a lower rate than what our home is assessed at. We have appealed our assessment increase with the county assessor. The assessor said that there was nothing he could do to help us, that he encouraged us to appeal with the St. Louis County Board of Equalization, and that's scheduled next year. These appeals have been only available through video chat, and no in-person hearings have been offered. My husband and I request that you as a committee take this to for the state of Missouri to implement measures to cap the annual assessed value for all resident occupied properties within the state to protect homeowners from sudden and substantial increases with their property bills. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, ma'am. Representative Keithley, you were recognized to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to kind of go back to the question I asked the St. Louis City Assessor, because you're going through the appeals process. You said your appeal isn't set for, the Board of Equalization is not set until next year?
Next week. I'm sorry.
Okay. I heard you
I'm
say
sorry.
that.
I must
That
have,
shouldn't-
sorry, misspoke.
Because what we heard in Jackson County last week was, we heard from a lot of residents who have been waiting 2 years for hearings, but that's with the state tax commission level. And so I get back to my question. I'll ask it from your perspective, because you're on the other end of this.
Right.
You know, I can think of a dozen reasons why you don't want to have to go through an appeal process. Research time you don't have. Sometimes they ask to come into your home. Who wants to let a government official into their home to look around and see what's there? There are a dozen reasons why no one wants to file appeal. But I'm still left wondering and scratching my head. What is the reason? What is the incentive that the assessor's office has to make sure they're getting right and not overshooting it? Because when I hear things like, and I know you said, okay, it's next week, but we are hearing that some of these things go on 2 years when the Board of Equalization can't come to a solution with the homeowner. And that whole time, these taxpayers are still paying the increased bill. I see nothing but incentive for the assessor's office to get it wrong, and no punishment, no disincentive for them to get it right. All the burden is on the property owner in the appeals process. None of the burden is on the assessor's office, and it seems like it's just in line with everything else about our property tax system, that is that everything is for protecting government and not for protecting the taxpayer. I thank you for clarifying that was next week,
Yes,
because we've heard
sorry.
from plenty of people that's taking 2 years, and I just think it's obnoxious and unacceptable. But I appreciate you for engaging in the process, because when we don't appeal it, everyone else's assessments go up around it. Thank you.
Right. If I could add, when we spoke with the assessor, we actually pointed out a neighboring house just 5 houses away from ours, not a half a mile away, but 5 houses away. And it was, the house was listed for sale last year for $625,000, and it actually sold for $550,000. So we tried to relay that to him, that the sales rates that they were applying to these homes and the prices that people were paying were inflated at some particular time, and those 5 houses that we were compared to sold for X amount of dollars, but then they didn't assess those houses on those dollars. They were assessed at a lower rate, and we were assessed at the higher rate that those houses sold for.
Ma'am, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Hales or Boyko? Okay, Representative Hales, you're recognized for inquiry.
Thank you for that. You just touched on something that I've personally gone through. My assessment this year went up 32%. I'm in U City. What I noticed was exactly what you just said, that the reappraisals for the comparable homes in some cases went substantially down from the purchase price. And so I hear what you're saying loud and clear. I'm living it myself too, and I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your testimony. Appreciate it. Nathan? Yep, you're on. You're up. And then after, let me get to Tad Berry is on deck.
Nathan Mink, St. Louis County. If memory serves correct, when I was a child, my parents' taxes only went up a little at a time because here in St. Louis County, if you stayed in your home, you were not reassessed. But then under County Executive Charlie Dooley, St. Louis County voted with the argument Representative Boyko gave, voted to change the reassessment to every 2 years, which led to the vast increase. It has the sad side effect of if a person's income does not increase by the amount the house increases by, then they're priced out of their home. I believe it was last summer or the summer before, our county assessor, Jake Zimmerman, was asked by one of the news stations, what could we do about the current problem? And he suggested a homestead tax credit, which is, I think, what we had prior, whereby if you stay in your home, your taxes do not go up unless you improve the home or sell the home. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Questions for this witness? Now, the homestead tax credit and the varying degrees around that has been mentioned many times. So, seeing no questions, gentlemen, thank you for your testimony. Tad? Yep. And then on deck is going to be Shannon Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Tad Berry. I am the Director of Client Service for a company called Property Assessment Review. We're based out of St. Louis. We represent taxpayers, homeowners, commercial property owners, and assessment appeals throughout Missouri. I've done thousands of appeals through the local assessor level all the way up to the state tax commission, some to the circuit court level. So we're pretty intimately familiar with that process. Obviously, we really appreciate the committee's time and attention on this matter. I want to just offer a little bit of maybe different insight from what you've heard so far across the state. We obviously play a lot in the appeal process itself. One of the things that we have been trying to get improved for the taxpayers and for appellants in the process is, there's a few things, but particularly we're running into significant delays at the state tax commission at this point for appeals. I think that is a factor of you have Jackson County adding a tremendous burden to the number of appeals that are filed. But nonetheless, as property values rise and increase, you're going to see more appeals coming out of that. I don't have a fantastic solution for that problem, other than I think the state tax commission probably could use some more hearing officers. Those are the parties delegated to hear these appeals once they reach that level, and many of them do. That would be effectively an appropriations measure to give them some more funding. Beyond that, we do have a Senate Bill 599 that was sponsored by Mr. Gregory, Senator Gregory last year. That Senate bill has a lot of taxpayer rights added in there, appellant rights, particularly the ability for a taxpayer to recoup some of the expenses in their appeal. So if you have to go through the state tax commission and you are successful in that appeal, you would get some of the expenses incurred in that appeal refunded to you at the end of that appeal. There are many other items in there, but obviously that's probably the biggest one for today. One other quick item is, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, gentlemen, I'm going to have to stop you.
That's okay.
Your time just ran out. Questions for this witness? Representative Boyko, you are first on my list. You're recognized to inquire.
So I guess my first question is, how many appeals does your office have in front of the state tax commission?
At this point, it's going to be well over 5,000. a great majority of those are pending on one or two particular issues. One issue is the issue of proper inspection. Did the assessor properly perform the 15% inspection? And another is dealing with the equitable assessment among properties, whether or not the assessor performed at the level, effectively, did they discriminate in their assessment process? Was it inequitable in that assessment? Typically known as a ratio appeal, for those that know, but it's technically discrimination is the claim.
Okay, and so to be clear, like your office is handling 5,000 appeals for this year's assessments?
For this year's assessments?
Or is that from
Yeah, no, that'd be
assessments?
about accurate in St. Louis County, yeah. That'd be about right. Active appeals at the moment for 2025. Now, those are at the Board of Equalization level right now.
Okay.
So that's the first step in the appeal process. Not all of those will make it to the State Tax Commission.
Okay. And of the ones that go to the State Tax Commission, do you have a sense of how many of those are going to be, I'm going to say successful, that you're going to get a substantial reduction on the assessment?
I mean, it'd be a large majority of them. It's certainly greater than 50%, if not 60 to 70%. It will vary depend on property type. So residential is going to be different than commercial, for instance.
And then, sorry to cut you off,
Yeah,
but my
no,
time's
yes, sir.
short. For taxpayers who go to the State Tax Commission and they don't have any representation, we've heard some talk about the ombudsman position not being funded at the State Tax Commission. Do you have a sense of how many of those people are successful with their appeals?
I do not, but I would say it is a tough hill to climb without either representation or an attorney to represent you. And then, frankly, you probably need an appraisal at that level if you really want to have a good shot at success.
Okay. And so as we discuss removing or lowering barriers for people to do an appeal, I just appreciate your insights on doing that as someone who has so much experience in front of the commission.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. No, I appreciate that.
Thank
Thanks a
you,
lot.
gentlemen. Thank you. I have room for, Roger. Yep, Representative Reedy, you are recognized to inquire. You can have this.
Thank you for being here. I do have a question. As a former assessor, I dealt with appeals, had very few people come to the Board of Equalization, had very few go to the Tax Commission. I talked with people as they came in my office, and we dealt with those issues. You say you're representing people at Board of Equalization, which is it's a very simple process. They can go in, state their case. They really don't have to have somebody to represent them. But my question to you, and you can answer it if you want to, how are you compensated? Are you compensated on a percentage of the savings?
Yes, sir.
That's
in the vast majority of cases.
So do
yes.
you advertise and tell people, hey, contact me and I'll get your assessment lowered? Is that how you advertise?
Yes, sir. In general, yes.
Okay. So in a way, you're kind of encouraging people to appeal and go through you as I dealt with, I called them tax reps. They call me. Usually the ones that call my county were from out of the area, and they did not want to appear at the Board of Equalization. They just wanted to call in. And so I think sometimes if we would encourage people to actually just talk with the assessor, talk with the assessor's staff, we could save them a lot of time and a lot of heartache of having to go through the process. And I know it worked in my county. It was a rural county, but so when we talk about it in an incentive to appeal, it's an incentive then to your company to appeal, right?
Well, sir, I would say that I never discourage a taxpayer from talking with the assessor first if they're comfortable in doing so. Oftentimes that does not get them where they need to be, in my experience. Beyond that, the process is a fairly complicated one, and it can be very hard to navigate for the layperson. So, we're very upfront with our services and what our fees are, so that there's not a attempt to deceive there.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you for your testimony, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Shannon Green, you were up, and Patrick Fox is on deck.
Hello. My name is Shannon Green, and I'm a property owner in Shrewsbury, here in St. Louis County. And the past 3 times my property has been assessed, that is in the last 6 years, I've had to appeal my assessment each time. And each time I've been able to get my home value lowered to one more in keeping with its actual value. This leads me to believe that something is broken within the reassessment system. For example, the most recent assessment for 2025 increased my property value over 34%. However, after appealing this huge increase, it was reduced to around 15%. I would propose adding limits that assessments cannot increase past a certain percentage, or for homes that are proven to be worth significantly less than others in their neighborhood, ensure that those future assessments have values that are reflective of that. And especially when those homes do not have renovations. Mine has been compared quite often to homes that have renovations, homes that have 2 bathrooms when mine only has 1, much larger like lot sizes, that kind of thing. Another solution could be that taxes wouldn't be collected based on guesstimated values altogether, since it's technically a tax on unrealized gains. On the subject of freezing taxes for seniors, that might seem like a good solution for them. However, I believe that could lead to all other properties being purposely overvalued in order to make up for the shortfall created by the reduction in revenue from the seniors' properties. This forcing younger people to shoulder more tax burden should not be a solution in tax hierarchy. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for this witness? Representative Murphy, you are recognized to inquire.
I get where you're coming from, but reducing income to local government doesn't put a burden on other people. It puts a burden on them to use their money more efficiently.
On the government to use it more efficiently,
Yes.
you mean?
Our
Yeah,
problem-
well, yes, I would
our
start
problem
there.
Our problem in government isn't that we don't have enough money. Our problem is we spend too much money.
Precisely.
And I would say if we cut a lot of taxes, we could probably make government a lot more efficient. So I wouldn't put that on the seniors. You know, giving them a break is a good thing to do. It's up to the government, whether it be the state or local or school boards or whatever, to start looking at how they're spending their money, because I'll tell you, there's plenty of waste there.
Yes. I definitely agree with that point.
Any other inquiries? Seeing none, ma'am, thank you for coming to testify.
Thank you for your
Appreciate
time.
it. Patrick Fox, you are up next, and then on deck, Jim and Deb Matoush.
Hello, my name is Patrick Fox. First, I want to thank the representatives for having these meetings so that feedback from the citizens can be provided. I want to share my perspective on 2 aspects of property taxes in this region that are problematic and negatively impacting taxpayers. The first is a bit smaller, but it is a big problem. Washington University. As an institution, I'm sure they do good work. However, they disproportionately have negative impacts on the communities where they hold property unrelated to their educational purpose, including the city of St. Louis County, University City, and Clayton. What many do not know is that they rely on an extraordinary exception for property owned that is not for educational purposes. Now, having worked in the nonprofit and government sectors my entire life, I understand the value of extending tax-exempt status to property when the property is used to conduct business associated with a charitable purpose. All private universities except WashU follow the statute that requires taxes to be paid on student housing. WashU, though, relies on an exemption granted to them prior to the existence of the Missouri Constitution, when they were called Elliott Seminary. WashU also regularly and routinely acquires property through related entities to secure historic tax credits, and immediately upon the expiration, changes the ownership to WashU to jettison tax liability. There should be a provision within historic tax credits that financially penalizes entities from being able to utilize this loophole. They know what a pilot is, a payment in lieu of taxes, and they won't do it. The second problem, and more serious, is the St. Louis County Assessor, Jake Zimmerman. I can confidently say that Mr. Zimmerman is the worst elected assessor in this county. And while it might be hyperbolic to do so since he's the only elected assessor, he is living up to that categorization. He's a former state rep and an attorney, and having an attorney as the person who's charged with making sure that property values are assessed correctly is like having a dentist make sure the oil's changed correctly in your car. He oftentimes blames outside counsel hired by property owners the problem with the assessment appeal process. They don't do it for free.
5 seconds.
Mr. Zimmerman does not value deadlines of any kind. He extends the personal property declaration deadline, which is not in accordance with statutory requirements. He also failed to pay his own personal property tax on time in 2020 and 2024.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to stop you right there. Any questions for this witness? Representative Keithley, you're recognized to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you bringing up the tax exemption status and how that strains, particularly residential homeowners in it. One other thing that I don't know if you've considered in it, but special taxing districts, particularly TIFs and other property tax abatements. In my district, we have Chesterfield Mall. It's a $353 million property tax abatement over the next 25 years. And who's going to pick that up? It's going to be borne by residential homeowners. So I appreciate the tax exemption part of it. I think that's another part of this conversation that we haven't had enough about where we carve it out, where we narrow the base, and are those exemptions going to places we want? Because I think right now you see residential homeowners really feeling the back end of that. Thank you.
Any other, one more inquiry of this, or questions for this witness? All right, seeing none. Yep, no, I'm just going to say seeing none from the Democrat contingent. Whoever's down there. Representative Burns, you're recognized to inquire.
Thank you. I just think before this ends, and I'll get your opinion on that. How do you feel about leaders of the state of Missouri bragging about being the worst funded state for education to a crowd that knows darn good and well that the state doesn't fund their school, they fund their school. And they're very diligent to make sure that their students are getting what they need. So I would just like for all of the leaders in this room to stop bragging about Missouri not caring about their kids and start acknowledging the people who are at risk of losing their homes because they use local tax dollars, not state tax dollars. Thank you for letting me ask that question.
You want to follow up with any comments? You have just about 30 seconds.
Not on that, but I just want to add one thing to encourage you to consider placing term limits on elected assessors like you all have to experience when you serve in the legislature at the state level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony, sir. Appreciate it. Okay. Listen, I'm going to upset some people in the room when I say what I'm getting ready to say. You guys are going to be the last two witnesses we have from the public, all right? I'm going to give the county commission or the state tax commission about the last 5 minutes of this meeting. We are stopping at 9 o'clock. I know there are people who are on this list. We tried to get through it, but we're not, and I apologize for that because I know if you're still here, you've been here for a while and you've stayed strong. I encourage those who don't get to testify at this microphone to fill out the forms online and give us your testimony, right? We'll look at it. So, again, I apologize. Having said that, please introduce yourselves. If you're both going to speak, once the other one starts to talk, just introduce yourself at that point in time, and you may proceed.
We're the Matushas, Jim and Deb. We just got a wallop of an increase. We did the math, and our tax increased 44%, and our valuation of our home increased 49%. We have no understanding or any reason why. And it just seems like there's no equal representation here. If you own property, you pay more taxes. There's never anything you ever vote on. There's never a ceiling. It only goes up and up and up. We've been in our home for 30 years, and our taxes have increased a whopping $21,000 over the years. So I just think my big thing is we have to learn to live within our means. And I would like to see not only St. Louis County, but all the governments, whether it's state, this is not a knock to you guys, but I would like to see that you don't force us into a position where we have to try to stretch ourselves when we already budgeted our lifestyle as it is. So for us to have our taxes and our valuation increase almost by 50% is really ridiculous. And you can speak to the appeal process.
I would tell you this, since you both come up together, you as one unit, and you have 30 seconds to make your claim. So, 30 seconds. So go ahead.
Tap dance real good.
So, thank you for being here, because we see you guys as a possible solution in a terrible scenario. 30 years ago, our taxes were $6,000. Mr. Reedy, you have no idea what you're asking us to do in going to that appeal process. I went 3 times, got told by very nice people just like yourself, oh, you have a great consideration, only to 3 to 6 months later get a nice note. Thank you, your case is thrown out with no change. We hired PAR, and they fight for us every time. And now our taxes are $26,000. So you are pricing people out of being in a home.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. Don't go away. Any questions? Representative Boyko, you are recognized to inquire.
Thanks. I didn't catch what county you guys live in.
Kirkwood,
Okay.
we're in St. Louis County.
Great. I'm from Kirkwood, so welcome. I guess my question would be, it does sound like predictability is one of the issues, right? You don't want to get the surprise letter in the mail. That's something we've heard across the state. So I do think...
It wasn't just a small increment.
No, I get that. But first of all, you want to be able to predict and budget for the future, right? That sounds like that's one of the concerns. And then with the appeal process, so you guys have hired representation the last few times that you've appealed, is that right?
Yeah.
Every time we've ever gotten results, it's been through hiring someone that knows the rigmarole and the BS. I stood the first time in a line in a shopping center for 2 hours to speak to nicest person ever. I said, do I really have a case here? And he says, you've got great points. You've made a great case. We love your comparable. I had done a lot of homework. And then 3 months later, I get this letter. It says, thank you for applying, but you have please come to the next level. Thanks a lot.
Sure. And I'm not making this accusatory. I just want to find out some of the facts. And then those times that you did get the letter, did you ever try to appeal to the next level or no? Okay. Yeah. And so reducing those barriers is one of the things I think might help to get to a result.
I'm a financial guy. I have my own financial business, and I know the lingo, I know the speak. I presented an excellent case, obviously biased towards my side, but the idiots on the other side that sat there very nicely with a thank you. Well, you have a great case. And just to move me on to get to the next person.
I appreciate that. Thanks for your testimony tonight.
Thank you all for your testimony. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. State Tax Commission representatives, would you come up, please? So listen, we committee members, we've had the opportunity, and we will have more opportunities to speak with these folks at the coming session or the coming meeting. So I want to leave this up to just you all to talk and talk about anything you heard tonight, and just take a few minutes here as we finalize this. I don't need and want any questions from the committee right now. We can follow up later at the next meeting, perhaps next week if need be. So anyway, 5 minutes, it's all yours. Introductions, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Gary Romine, Chairman of the Missouri State Tax Commission. With me, Debbie McGinnis, Dan Hutton, and Greg Osbury. We've been here as much as we can be to provide information and to learn as much as we can. I want to point out one thing, the discussion about the ombudsman in our meeting that we had Tuesday. We want to start the mechanics of getting that position in place as quickly as possible. But in the process, we evaluated what that responsibility is. It's not to hold the hand of the taxpayer, but it's to come up with tools and solutions for them to be able to do the appeal process. One of the most undaunting parts of that is coming up with comps. And we've had taxpayers tell us that they've asked their assessor, can I get the comps, the BOE, can I get the comps? What did you use to evaluate my home? Can we review those and challenge those? And they've been told no. We understand the ombudsman has the authority to investigate. Maybe they can do a sunshine request and we'll get that information. But the taxpayer needs access to data to properly appeal, and that's probably the biggest burden that they experience. So I appreciate the conversation on the ombudsman. It gives us something to consider in our process of what's going on here. Also, Representative Steinhoff asked about solutions. The assessment process should not be the shocking effect. If the Hancock Amendment is working as it should, the tax rate increase should be minimalized. And so maybe coming up with a stronger formula. We talked with Eggleston about a formula that better obtains the value of the property, or however we want to structure that. The CAMA system needs to be something that we look at. We have language that we have proposed the last couple of years to the legislature on how to maybe tighten up the CAMA system standards so that each assessor has a best tool in that process to evaluate land. So coming up with the value of the property and those tools is very important to get done. That's one side of the ledger. The other side of the ledger is, as Hancock intended, protect the taxpayer. One of the things that we are, again, realizing, FEMA uses the assessed value of properties when there's a disaster in the area. If you have an area that's destroyed by a tornado or flood, they're going to look at the assessed values. And if you have an assessor that's only at 60 or 70% of their assessed value, that hurts your taxpayer. Now, Lord forbid that happens, and it doesn't happen very often, but when you look at where we should be with the assessed values, you have to realize it's the ripple effect. And one of the ripple effects, how do we deal with FEMA in evaluating their values they're going to assign? So with that, I don't know how close I am to 5 minutes. Debbie presented our budget. We had new assessor training today. We rushed from there to get to here. One of the things about the budget I'd like for her to reflect on.
The state budget's about $52 billion, and our budget will have two components. It has the part that's used within the state tax commission, that's $3 million, and then another $11.5 million that is a pass-through account to the assessors. We do not have access to use that money in any way other than to give it to the counties. Our part of the budget is 0.0058%, which means that 17,000 of our budgets would fit in the state's budget. So we're relatively small, but we're very prudent about how we spend our money.
And we appreciate the testimony earlier. We do have thousands of appeals that are pending. We were a 100-member agency at one time. When the 2005 foundation formula went into effect, there wasn't as much concern about the tax commission and the follow-up with the assessment process because it wasn't as critical to the formula. And so now we're down to 37. But being as frugal as we can and as intense as we can with the staff we have, we are behind on the appeals process. And we have 3 hearing officers to hear just 6,000 appeals from St. Louis, 6,000 from Kansas City area. We're going to cry poor here for a minute if we can, but we have shrunk our staff to a point that we're starting to see the adverse effect, and would do appreciate the consideration that we would like to have some hearing officers to streamline the appeal process in our office.
I appreciate you being here. First off, I've said this every meeting, say it again. You being here is important so that people can see that you're in tune with what we're talking about, and you can hear everything that's being said in these meetings. So again, I appreciate that. We've had more people here that wanted to testify than at any meeting thus far, I think. And that's great. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time. I hope that you all will join us in Macon next Wednesday. That will be the final. And those who didn't get to testify here, if you want to take a road trip to the country in the mid part of the state. I know those folks would welcome you. We will be meeting 5:30 at the Comfort Inn, so I hope to see you there. We can follow up perhaps with more information.
Thank you.
So committee members, thank you so much for being here. City Clayton Center, I appreciate you all. This meeting is adjourned.